But actually, most of those people don't actually research properly, I think. And they just presume that, like, because it's on YouTube or because it's on films or because it's in Hollywood, that it's got to be real. It's really not. That's not the mark of the beast, and then not the numbers of the beast either. I actually have a friend, and I only remembered because of the birthmark, and he was born, and on his neck at the back, he literally has 666 is his birthmark, but his goes really strange because it goes, he has like 1 6, and then inside that round bit of that 6 he has another 6, and then inside that one he has another one, and he was born with that. That's his birthmark. It doesn't mean anything bad or negative. It's all just like Hollywood propaganda, let's say. And I just wanted to make that clear. Obviously, this story is for entertainment purposes only, so, take it with a pinch of salt, guys. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the Drakmonstola collection. This story is called Bride and Seek, Urban Legend. It was June, and what a perfect month for a wedding. Dan and Melissa had been dating for several years, and Dan finally popped the question she'd been anticipating for over a year. She thought that day would never come, but it finally did. And when Dan asked her to marry him, she said, yes, yes, and they shared a long kiss. Melissa said with excitement, Dan, I know the perfect place to have the wedding. Dan asked, where? My grandmother's farm, replied Melissa. Sounds good to me, replies Dan. The following week the wedding was planned. The weather was beautiful. After the wedding was over and most of the guests left, Dan decided to play a game called hide and seek. There were only about 10 of their friends left and said they would like to play. Dan, being the groom and the one that asked everyone to play, said he would be it and everyone else would hide. The game went on for over an hour, and when one of the guests asked where his bride was, Dan said, she probably went inside the house for a nap. Everyone's left, and Dan went inside Melissa's grandmother's house to check on his bride. He asked her grandmother where she might be, but Melissa's grandmother had just gotten up from a nap herself, so she came in. She wouldn't have noticed. Dan said to her, I'll check the other bedrooms. I'm sure she's in one of those rooms. Dan checked all the bedrooms. No sign of his bride anywhere. Maybe she's in the barn. Dan checked the barn, the rest of the property, but still, no sign of his bride. Dan went back inside the house and told Melissa's grandmother, if she doesn't show up by morning, then I will file a missing persons report. Morning came, and Dan called everyone that attended the wedding, and his bride's grandmother, and everyone had no knowledge of her whereabouts, so Dan called the police and filed a missing persons report on his bride. A year had passed. Melissa's grandmother was cleaning around in the attic and said, it smells like death in here. The grandmother smelled around the attic, but the most potent smell seemed to be coming from the trunk, so she carefully opened the trunk and screamed to the top of her lungs. And there she was, the bride with maggots in her eye sockets, rats chewing on her rotting flesh. When they were playing hide and seek, the bride wanted to be the hardest one to find, and she made her way upstairs to the attic. Somehow, she got in the trunk. The lid fell on her head, knocking her unconscious, and the chest locked itself. The bride suffocated, and no one ever checked in the attic to see if the bride was hiding there. Not even the groom checked to see. After about a month trying to live through the tragedy of losing her granddaughter, she decided to sell the farm. Amid the chaos of their crumbling world, the story of Dan and Melissa's wedding stood as a stark contrast. A glimmer of hope and happiness that had once existed. It was a memory that seemed to belong to a different reality. A time before the apocalypse and the subsequent disasters side. They aimed to bridge the gap between the living and the departed, to unlock the secrets that lay dormant within the realm of the supernatural. Their preparations were meticulous, their hearts a blend of excitement and trepidation. The investigators arrived at the bridge well before the midnight hour, setting up their devices and cameras, ready to capture any trace of the ethereal presence that was said to haunt the site. The air was thick with anticipation, a tension that matched the charged atmosphere of the legendary location. As the clock struck midnight, the investigators began their efforts. Voices filled the air, electronic devices crackling with energy as they attempted to pierce the veil between the worlds. Questions were posed into the ether, their words echoing through the darkness like ripples across a pond. Tom, Virginia, are you here? The responses were faint at first, mere whispers that seemed to hang on the edge of audibility. Static danced across their recording devices, the sounds of the night intermingling with spectral responses that they sought. Yes. A voice emerged, soft and almost hesitant, as if the very act of communication defied the natural order. The investigators' hearts raced as they pressed forward, asking more questions, attempting to piece together the puzzle of Tom and Virginia's tragedy. Why were you on the bridge that night? One investigator inquired, her voice slightly trembling. The answers were fragmented, the voice of the past reveling glimpses of their forbidden love. Love, night, stars. The responses came in disjointed phrases, as if the emotions that had once burned brightly were now fading embers struggling to be rekindled. With each attempt to communicate, the veil between the worlds seemed to thin, the bridge itself a conduit for the past, to spill into the present. Eerie sensations of being watched, of a presence lingering just beyond the edge of sight, sent shivers down the investigators' spines. Shadows danced on the corners of their vision, teasing the boundaries of reality. But as the hours wore on, the investigators sensed growing frustration from the spirits they sought to communicate with. Their responses grew more distorted, their voices carrying a weight of a longing and sorrow that bordered on desperation. The atmosphere around the bridge seemed to thicken, an almost palpable tension that was a testament to the presence of forces beyond their comprehension. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the bridge, extinguishing their recording devices and plunging them into darkness. Panic surged through the investigators, their sense of control slipping away as a chilling whisper seemed to echo around them. Leave. The word reverberated, accompanied by an undeniable sense of urgency. Terrified, the investigators packed up their equipment and retreated from the old mill bridge, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and awe. As they looked back at the enigmatic structure one last time, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had come face to face with the remnants of love that had transcended even death. In the aftermath of their encounter, the investigators sifted through their recordings, their photographs, their own memories, attempting to piece together the puzzle of the night's events. The voices of Tom and Virginia, the whispers of the past, haunted their thoughts, their longing for closure, a mirror of the spirits that they had encountered. The town of Willowbrook continued to be shrouded in the chilling awe of its haunted bridge. The tale of Tom and Virginia's forbidden love had taken on new dimensions, interwoven with the attempts of the living to communicate with the departed. The old mill bridge remained a realm of uncertainty, a space where the past and the present collided in ways that defied explanation. And so, the story of the old mill bridge endured, a haunting symphony of love, tragedy, the unquenchable thirst for answers. The paranormal investigators had touched the fringes of the unknown, their encounter leaving them forever marked by the lingering presence of Tom and Virginia. The bridge, a silent sentinel of the past, stood as a reminder that some secrets were meant to remain veiled, that the boundaries between the realms of the living and the dead were both fragile and eternal. The end. Thank you for listening to this Dracon story and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another Dracon story. This one's called The Ghost of a Serial Killer. Just when the town of Kilsington thought it was safe to unlock their doors, something was back and ready to put the fear back in their hearts once again. That fear would be the serial killer by the name of Jack Kilman, who was responsible for the killing of 7 prostitutes in 7 weeks. Jack couldn't keep a job if his life depended on it, and the only thing he loved in his life was the bottle. He thought he was a ladies' man, but that was just a dream, and any woman that might gaze upon him wasn't because of his looks, because his looks wouldn't get him anything, but a bottle being broken over his head or a punch in his face when he would try to hit on a guy's girl at the bar. Jack was a loser and became a woman hater, and he decided to take his anger out on women, so he chose prostitutes, knowing that no one would miss them if he killed them, so he thought. Jack planned to kill 1 prostitute a week. Jack was able to lure a total of 7 prostitutes in his car and kill them until week 8. Number 8's planned kill escaped, and the police caught Jack. Each prostitute that Jack killed had the same expressions on their faces and the same initials carved on their foreheads. J.K. Also, the prostitutes were not sexually assaulted, but apparently when they looked into their killer's eyes, well, that was what stopped their heart from beating, resulting in instant death from fear. Jack's reign of terror was finally over. When the officer put the handcuffs on Jack, he said, "You think this is it?" The officer said, "I hope you rot in hell for what you have done, Jack Kilman." Jack just laughed and spat in the officer's face. The officer wiped the spit off his face with an handkerchief from his pocket and put Jack in the back seat of his squad car and drove down to the police station to book him on murder charges and throw him in a jail cell until his court date. Jack couldn't afford a lawyer, so one was appointed for him. His lawyer tried to get a plea deal, but the judge wasn't interested. So Jack was sentenced to death for the murder of 7 prostitutes and sat on death row for 3 years. After 3 years on death row and not being granted a stay of execution, Jack's sentence was the electric chair for the killings. When Jack was told he was going to the electric chair, he showed no emotions and just smiled. "Whatever," said. Jack's last words, before he got the juice wax, was, "You think frying me is going to stop me from killing again? No. Mark my words, I'll be back. And this time, you won't catch me." The warden laughed and said, "The only place you're going is hell." Then the switch was thrown. Jack's blood was boiling. Foam came out of his mouth and his body went limp. The doctor placed his stethoscope on Jack's burning flesh to make sure his cold heart wasn't beating. And there was none, so the doctor pronounced Jack dead. Just days after Jack was laid to rest, in an unmarked grave at Kilsington Cemetery, a couple of teenagers were walking down Kilsington Street and stumbled upon the body of a nude prostitute. They obviously immediately reported it to the sheriff, and when the forensic team examined the body, the initials J.K. were carved into her forehead. And the first thing that came to mind was a copycat killer, but they were dead wrong. A serial killer, Jack Kilman, made good on his word. He was back and ready to step up the body count to give the police dead-end clues to who was making the killings. Another dozen prostitutes' bodies were found with the same initials carved into their foreheads. Their nude bodies were found on the sides of roads and in fields just like before. There was about to be a turn of events because the killings of prostitutes stopped for over a week. Then ordinary citizens of the town of Kilsington were showing up dead on the sides of roads and in fields and in lakes with the initials J.K. carved into their foreheads. The ghost of Jack Kilman loved it all because no one could see him, which made it very easy for him to commit these murders and get away with it. Before the sheriff or townspeople had a chance to find out who was making the killings, it was too late. The ghost of Jack Kilman, the serial killer, had killed all the townspeople, including the sheriff. The town of Kilsington was a ghost town with a population of 1, the serial killer Jack Kilman. However, the eerie silence that shrouded Kilsington was soon to be shattered by a team of unlikely heroes. A group of seasoned ghost hunters who specialised in dealing with malevolent spirits and supernatural energies. Word of the town's plight had spread among the paranormal community, and this team, known as Spectral Sentinels, decided to investigate. Led by their experienced leader, Amelia Drake, the Spectral Sentinels arrived in Kilsington, armed with an array of ancient artifacts, powerful incantations, and their unwavering determination. Amelia had dealt with vengeful spirits before, but the malevolent energy that surrounded the town was unlike anything she had encountered. She knew that the key to stopping Jack Kilman's reign of terror would involve not only unravelling the source of the power, but also confronting his own twisted psyche. The team set up a makeshift base in the town's abandoned police station, now a haunting reminder of the terror that had gripped the community. They studied old newspapers, police reports, and the history of Jack Kilman, piecing together the fragments of his tragic life. It was clear that he hated women, and his desire for control had fueled his murderous rampage. As Amelia delved deeper into the investigation, she discovered that the town's original haunting had been fueled by a dark ritual. It seemed Jack had performed this just before his execution. He had invoked forces from the netherworld. It seemed like Jack had forged a connection between his own spirit and the actual energy of the town itself. This had allowed his vengeful ghost to continue the reign of terror beyond the grave. With this newfound understanding, Amelia formulated a plan to break the connection between Jack's spirit and the town's energy. The Spectral Sentinels performed an intricate ritual, channeling their collective energy to weaken Jack's grip on the town. But this would not be enough to defeat him entirely. They needed to confront him directly with the realm of spirits. One by one, the team members journeyed into a terrifying astral plane, where the lines between reality and the supernatural were blurred. Amelia faced Jack's vengeful spirit, challenging his twisted beliefs and forcing him to confront the pain he had inflicted on others. The battle of wills was intense, as Amelia used her knowledge of psychology and the power of empathy to weaken his hold on the town's energy. Meanwhile, the rest of the Spectral Sentinels performed a complex ritual on the physical plane, drawing upon the combined energy of the town's residents who had lost their lives. This surge of communal energy acted as a beacon, guiding Jack's spirit away from the town towards the realm of justice and resolution. As the confrontation in the astral plane reached its climax, Amelia's unwavering compassion began to break through the layers of Jack's malevolence. His spirit wavered, torn between the darkness he had embraced and the glimmers of remorse deep within him. With a final surge of effort, Amelia shattered the connection between Jack and the town's energy, sending him hurtling towards the realm of spirits that awaited him. Back in the real world, the ritual performed by the members of the team reached its climax. The energy released created brilliance, a blinding light that engulfed the town, banishing the lingering darkness that had plagued it for so long. The curse of Jack Kilman was finally broken, and the town of Kilsington was free from his vengeful grasp. The townspeople, unaware of the epic battle that had unfolded on both the physical and astral planes, slowly returned back to the town and their homes and began to rebuild their lives. The Spectral Sentinels, satisfied with their success, quietly departed, knowing that their work was done. And so, the once quiet town of Kilsington found solace once again, as the streets were filled with laughter and joy of the residents. The nightmare of Jack Kilman had finally been laid to rest, thanks to the determination and courage of those who refused to let fear control their lives. The end. Geesh, imagine if that was true. They do say that, regarding spirits, If they were not nice in real life, they're probably not going to be nice in death. I tend to believe that, but coming back and killing, that's a really, really weird thing, isn't it? Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the Drac von Stoller collection. We're on season 3. This is called Road Rage. Martin Baxter always needed speed on the highway. He drove a black Chevelle SS he called the Black Racer and was still up for a challenge. Finally, Martin got tired of just asking the drivers to race him, so he decided to up the ante by playing chicken, which turned into road rage for the drivers he was pissing off. When Martin got off work, he tailgated a driver, but the driver he provoked thought he could teach him a lesson. Martin's ego and temper made him think he was bulletproof. Then the driver came alongside Martin's car, rolled his driver's side window down and shouted obscenities at Martin, and told him to pull over and settle it with fists, not cars. That just pissed Martin off even more, which actually didn't take much. As the driver motioned for Martin to pull over, Martin pulled out his .357 Magnum and shot the driver in the head. Then Martin said as he laughed at, the killing of the driver, "Nobody messes with the Black Racer." Martin sped off down the road to his cabin in the woods. He couldn't wait to see the evening news to hear about the road rage incident. After watching the news and hearing about the other driver dying at the scene, Martin just laughed and said he chased down a can of beer now. Wow, I'm going to be famous. I can't wait to piss off another driver and blow out his brains. Martin's fame was short-lived because the police had the license plate number and make and model of his car. They were ready for him to strike again, hoping to save the next driver from Martin's senseless acts of road rage. Martin thought since it was night time the police couldn't catch him, but he was dead wrong. Martin sped down the highway, tossing beer cans out of the driver's side window and smoking a cigarette, in pursuit of his next victim. He found one willing driver that had a temper, and the road rage began. But this time, the police were hot on his trail, with lights buzzing. Martin looked in his rearview mirror and said, "Damn, I was just getting started, and now they're going to spoil it for me." Since Martin knew, in the back of his mind, if the police took him, he'd be up for murder and get the death penalty, he decided to lead the police on a deadly chase, and that ended in Martin's death. So there wouldn't be, a need to waste taxpayers' money on this low-life psychotic killer, at least. Martin finally lost control of his prized possession, the car hit a telephone pole. Martin's head was decapitated and went sailing out of the driver's side window, landing in the middle of the road. One of the squad cars tried to swerve and miss the head, but it was too late to react. So Martin's head split into 2 pieces as the tire ran over it. Martin's fame only lasted 24 hours. Months after Martin Baxter's violent demise, his restless spirit continued to haunt the stretch of highway where he had met his tragic end. The legend of the ghostly Black Racer grew, with rumours of phantom cars speeding down the road at night, headlights blazing, engine roaring. Witnesses claimed to have seen glimpses of a figure behind the wheel, a malevolent presence that left an icy chill in its wake. Local authorities were baffled by the reports, unable to explain the eerie occurrences that seemed to escalate as time went on. Drivers began avoiding the road after dark, fearful of encountering the vengeful spirit of Martin Baxter. Accidents and near misses became commonplace, each one contributing to the growing fear surrounding the area. Frustrated and desperate for a solution, the town's residents reached out to a renowned team of ghost hunters, known for their expertise in dealing with malevolent spirits. Led by Dr. Emily Parker, a parapsychologist, with a reputation for handling difficult cases. The team arrived armed with an array of paranormal detection equipment and a determination to put an end to the Black Racer's haunting. Setting up their equipment on the site of Martin Baxter's fatal crash, the team conducted thorough investigations, including EVP, electronic voice phenomena, EMF, electromagnetic field readings. The air was thick with tension as they waited for any signs of paranormal activity. As the night deepened, the team's efforts began to pay off. Faint whispers and unexplained fluctuations in EMF readings indicated the spirit of Martin Baxter might indeed be present. Dr. Parker, armed with the knowledge of psychology and paranormal phenomena, decided to attempt direct communication with the restless spirit. In the midst of the EVP session, Dr. Parker addressed the spirit, her voice steady yet empathic. Martin Baxter, we understand your pain and anger, but continuing to haunt this road won't bring you peace. Your actions in life were filled with rage, and that rage has trapped you in existence. It's time to let go and find the closure you need. The EVP recording picked up an eerie silence, followed by a distant haunting laughter that seemed to reverberate through the night. The atmosphere grew more charged, and a chilling wind seemed to sweep through the area. The team held their breath, sensing that a breakthrough might be near. Then, as if in response to Dr. Parker's plea, the air grew still, and a faint figure began to materialize beside the wreckage of a black racer. It was Martin Baxter's ghost, his features twisted in a mixture of anger and anguish. Who are you to tell me what to do? His voice echoed, carrying a weight of bitterness and despair. Dr. Parker stepped forward, her presence exuding empathy. We're here to help you find peace. Your rage and violence has kept you tethered to this world, but you can choose to move on, to find redemption. The ghostly figure wavered, its features shifting between anger and sorrow. The surrounding atmosphere crackled with tension, as if the very fabric of the supernatural world hung in balance. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the figure of Martin Baxter began to dissolve, its features softening. I'm tired, he whispered, his voice carrying a weariness that spoke of centuries of suffering. With a final flicker, the spirit vanished, leaving behind an eerie silence that was eventually filled with normal sounds of the night. The team of ghost hunters exchanged glances, feeling the weight of the moment. In the days and weeks that followed, the reports of the black racer's haunting ceased. Drivers tentatively began using the road once more, no longer plagued by the fear of encountering a vengeful spirit. The town slowly reclaimed a sense of peace, as if the restless soul of Martin Baxter had finally found the closure it had been denied in life. And so, the legend of the black racer shifted from one of terror to one of redemption, reminding everyone that even in the darkest of circumstances, there's always the possibility of finding forgiveness and release. And that is the end of that story. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the Drac von Stoller collection. This story is called Grave Robbers. It was 1862. The town of Sickville had many gold mines that thrived in an overabundance of wealth until greed took over and friends and neighbors became enemies. There was always someone standing guard by the mines, fearing the worst. So that's when things got ugly, and people that used to be friends started dying to get their hands on the gold. The sound of gunfire became the norm for this town. Many of the greedy townspeople that were killed, well, they did it basically just to get a piece of the action. No mining skills. So the town of Sickville went belly up in just a year. The only place where business was thriving was the cemetery, because greed took over and people started dying daily. And buried in the graveyard, well, it was rapidly getting overcrowded. Finally, the 50 people left standing, afraid, hungry and broke, decided there was nothing left in the town of Sickville to warrant their stay. So the people got other valuables and got on their horses in search of a new town. After a few months, the town of Sickville was nothing but a ghost town with tumbleweeds rolling around. Meanwhile, in a town called Dust Bowl, the town had just got robbed by a gang called the Aces High. After the robbery, the gang rode out of the town in search of a place to hide. One of the boys named Belt Buckle Willie said, "I know the perfect town to hide in." The leader of the gang, Joe Spade, said, "This better be good, because the law is hot on our trail, and we need to lose these lawmen quick, or we'll be getting the gallows." "Just do as I say, and we'll be rich," said Belt Buckle Willie. "First, we need to lead them into this valley, where we can ambush them, or we don't stand a chance of getting to enjoy this loot that will bring us wealth we never had," explained Belt Buckle Willie. After a fierce gun battle with the lawmen, the Aces High Gang laughed at how easy it was to take down the law. But the Aces High Gang had something more evil waiting in the shadows for them when they rode into the ghost town of Sickville. Before the Aces High Gang rode into the town of Sickville, they left their mark behind by placing an ace card on each of the lawmen's head and shot one bullet into the card. That obviously exited out of their heads to let anyone know who stumbled upon the lawmen that the Aces High Gang meant business. The Aces High Gang got on their horses, shooting their pistols in the air, and made their way through the valley to the town of Sickville. As the boys were riding their horses through the town, Belt Buckle Willie said, "Look over there at the cemetery. I bet all the dead that are buried have more riches inside their graves than what's in these satchels. What do you think, boys?" The boy said, "I don't know, but I guess we won't know until we dig 'em up." The Aces High Gang tied their horses to a hitching post at the Six Gun Saloon and entered inside in search of some whiskey. One of the gang members, named Digger, said, "Looks like we've got company." An old man that was watching over the town until the new owner arrived entered the saloon and said, "Boys, I think you all should ride out of town before you wind up dead and buried in that cemetery over there." Just basically the boys laughed and opened a bottle of whiskey behind the bar. Belt Buckle Willie poured each one a drink. The boys turned around with their drinks in their hands, facing the old man, and downed their shots of whiskey. They laughed at the old man again and threw their shot glasses at the old man, hitting him upside the head. The old man said, "Y'all will be sorry." The old man swung open the saloon doors and left. Digger asked the other gang members, "Are you all going to just stand there and let that old man try to scare us out of town?" Joe and Belt Buckle Willie chimed in and said, "He's a dead man." The boys swung open the saloon doors, guns drawn and ready to fill the old man full of holes. Just as they stepped out of the saloon to the dusty wind, they started yelling for the old man, but there was no sign of him anywhere. The boys said, "We must have scared the old man and he left town." The Aces High Gang was unaware that the old man was a ghost. The gang passed around a bottle of whiskey, and Belt Buckle Willie said, "Let's get some shovels, head on to that cemetery, dig up some dead bodies, see if I'm right." The sun was setting. The boys brought shovels and lanterns with them because they would be digging into the better part of the night. All three men entered the cemetery, and just as the gate shut behind them, it started thundering. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" replied Joe. "I thought he heard a moaning sound," exclaimed Digger. "Digger, I think you drank too much whiskey," said Joe. Belt Buckle Willie chimed in and said, "Let's start digging before it rains." The boys dug up at least 10 bodies, and the town's clock struck 12, and that's when all hell broke loose. Digger started yelling, "Get this thing off me! It's got hold of my ankle and won't let go." Joe said, "You've got a gun, stupid. Shoot it." Digger started shooting at what had hold of his foot. Then the dead that was buried in the cemetery were coming out of their graves. Digger fell to the ground and started screaming out in pain. One of the dead squeezed his ankle so hard it tore away from his leg, and he was losing a lot of blood. Joe and Belt Buckle Willie didn't stand a chance against the dead. Joe and Belt Buckle Willie were surrounded by the dead with nowhere to run. Their bullets were of no use. followed by screams throughout the cemetery as the living dead tore into their flesh. The SSI gang should have just robbed stagecoaches and stayed away from robbing graves, and only been happy with the money they stole from the town of Dust Bowl instead of going looking for more. The end. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the continuation of the Dracon Story collection. Some of the stories are really strange, but I kind of read them in order, so there may be one or two that you're not keen on, and I can understand that. However, please note that most of his books are really good. This is called The Night It Rained Hell. The night finally arrived, and all the people of the earth thought they were going to a better place, but they were dead wrong. The sky was blood red, then out of nowhere came thunder, followed by blinding white lightning. People dropped to their knees in the streets, crying at what should have been tears of joy. Instead were tears of sorrow. Not only did the beautiful sky turn a blood red, but their bodies were aging rapidly. Their bones were becoming brittle, because the rain that was pouring down from the sky was bright red with some unknown substance, causing every human that came in contact with it to age, and then when they started to cry tears, the tears turned to acid. So they had to hold back their tears or suffer severe burns to their skin. All through the streets were people wailing in pain, looking for comfort. There were none. Only death was their way out. Moments later, a loud, eerie voice followed by laughter came from the sky that could be heard from all over the earth. The voice was none other than the devil himself, and he simply said, "Welcome to hell." People were jumping out of windows to their deaths. Mass hysteria was an all-time high, as the devil laughed at how the humans were helping him out by killing themselves by the thousands by way of self-inflicted gunshots to the head. But suddenly the atmosphere shifted, and a shimmering light descended from the sky. It was the grey aliens, known for their advanced technology and wisdom. They'd been observing the Earth for a long time, and had recognized the need for intervention to prevent the catastrophic future that was unfolding. Their intention was not to destroy, but to help humanity find its way back to harmony. The Greys worked quickly, utilizing their advanced knowledge to neutralize the strange substance in the rain that had caused suffering. They deployed healing drones that spread a gentle mist, cleansing the land and restoring the vitality that had been lost. People who had aged rapidly began to feel rejuvenated. Their brittle bones grew strong once more. Seeing the compassion and technology of the grey aliens, humans started to regain hope. They realized that they were not alone in their struggles, and that there were beings who cared about their well-being. The tears of sorrow turned into tears of gratitude as people embraced each other, united by the shared experience of both suffering and redemption. The devil's eerie voice was met with defiance and determination from the humans. No longer paralyzed by fear, they banded together, using their collective strength to counter the devil's influence. The devil's laughter turned into frustration as he witnessed the humans refusing to succumb to despair. With the help of the grey aliens, humanity embarked on a journey of healing and growth. They learned from the advanced technology and the wisdom of their extraterrestrial allies, using their newfound knowledge to address the world's problems. The planet began to flourish as humans worked together to restore the environment and ensure a sustainable future for generations to come. Over time, the devil's power waned. As humanity's resilience and unity grew stronger, the Earth was transformed into a paradise, a testament to the potential of cooperation between different species. The Greys, satisfied with the progress they had witnessed, bid farewell to humanity, leaving behind the promise of continued friendship across the cosmos. The story teaches us that even in the face of darkness, hope, unity, and the willingness to learn from others can lead to positive change. It's a reminder that no matter how dire the circumstances may seem, there is always a path towards a brighter future. The end. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and to another story from Drac von Stoller. If you're listening to this playlist, you'll probably realise they're all Drac von Stoller stories anyway. This one's called A Night to Dismember. Things were starting to look pretty grim for Sam and Sally Edwards. Sam lost his job at the slaughterhouse, had to top things off, his wife never worked a day in her life. She wasn't able to contribute to their marriage monetarily. Since they both lived in a small farming community called Cavendale, and nothing more than high school education, the handful of top-paying jobs would be out of their reach. They were both doomed to lead a poverty-stricken life, unless they could get back up on their heels and turn things around. Their electric bill would be due in the next couple of days, and if they didn't scrape up some cash quickly, it would be lights out for both of them. Knowing that in a couple of days they would be without electricity, they sat down at the kitchen table thinking of ways to get out of the devastating mess. Sam said, "I know how we can turn things around. We can rent out one of our bedrooms. That will bring in some money so we can eat, and save us from having to spend the winter in the dark and freeze to death." His wife says, "That sounds like a good idea." Sam kissed his wife and said, "I'll head into town and see what interest I can drum up." They both were starting to feel like help was on its way, but no one in their right mind would want to rent a room in their house because they weren't clean people. If something fell on the floor, that's where it stayed. They were just too lazy to clean up after themselves. Sam managed to bring back some interested people, but when they stepped inside the house, they held their breath and immediately turned around and told them they weren't interested. Sam slammed the front door behind them as they got in their cars and drove off into the night. His wife told him, "Surely we can think of something, because if we don't, we'll be living in the streets soon." Sam paced back and forth in the kitchen and said, "I know. We'll ask our nice neighbours, the Thompsons, to come over tomorrow night for dinner and rob them. Yep. This way that'll stop our lights from being turned off." His wife said, "If we must, then we must survive. I'm not going to live out on the streets and beg for money and food." Sam called the Thompsons and invited them over for supper the next night. Mr. Thompson's response was, "Sure, we'd be delighted to come over for dinner." Sam hung up the phone and said to his wife, "They'll be here for supper tomorrow night." His wife said in excitement, "I can almost taste Mr. and Mrs. Thompson's bloody heart in my mouth." She rubbed her belly. Sam smiled and said, "I couldn't agree with you more, my darling." Sam and his wife then turned in for the night, feeling pretty good about their luck. Things were about to change, but these two were about to find out their bright idea would eventually do them in very soon. She asked her husband as they were lying in bed, "What will we use as a weapon to rob them? We have no guns." Sam replied, "I've got a couple of shovels in the shed, and if they refuse to give us any money, then I guess we'll have to hit them both upside the head, bury the bodies in our backyard." She laughed and said, "Oh, I hope we don't have to resort in murder, but if that's what it's going to take, then so be it." "Let's get some sleep so we can start planning everything we need to do before the Thompsons come over for dinner tomorrow," explained Sam. "That sounds a good idea," replied his wife. They both slept like babies through the night, woke up in the morning feeling refreshed. But the younger pains for both of them were stronger than ever, so they headed to the kitchen for some breakfast. But all that was there was stale bread and peanut butter. They both were too hungry to care that the bread was stale and ate their peanut butter sandwiches anyway, even though it didn't really satisfy their hunger. Sam said to his wife, "I can't wait until the Thompsons arrive. Oh, God, we need to set some food in our house. That's for sure." "Well, there isn't going to be any real meal waiting on them. There's only going to be a shovel outside of their heads, and their hearts on plates, so we can take away our hunger pains. You're so right, honey. This peanut butter sandwich didn't do my stomach justice. Finally, night arrived, and there was a knock at the door. It was the Thompsons. Sam and his wife each grabbed a shovel and told them to come inside. When they stepped inside their home, expecting a warm welcome and a casual dinner with kind neighbours, Sam and his wife swung their shovels and whacked Mr. and Mrs. Thomas right upside their heads. They both hit the floor, but they were both still alive, moaning from the pain. So Sam said to his wife, "I think another hard whack up the side of the head ought to do it." They gave the Thompsons another whack up the side of their heads. The moaning stopped. Sam and his wife carried the Thompsons' dead bodies one at a time, dismembered them, taking out their hearts, liver, and flesh to put in the skillet on the stove to be cooked and eaten, so their bellies would be full and their hunger pains would diminish. The Thompsons' organs were added to the skillet to fill the kitchen with an aroma to satisfy their sense of smell and taste buds. After the organs were cooked, Mrs. Edwards placed them on 2 plates, one for her husband, one for her. Then they sat at the kitchen table that was covered in the Thompsons' blood and ate every bite, even licked off the bloody juices from their plates. They were just hungry. Why waste the slightest drop of raw juices? You need that to satisfy your hunger. Killing the Thompsons was just the beginning. Their hunger pains would be back again. They would run out of money that was robbed from the Thompsons, so Sam would have to go back into town and bring back some more victims to dismember, rob and satisfy their hunger for flesh. When Sam was in town, he purchased 2 shotguns to be used if someone tried to escape from their home. Sam and his wife would later become what the town would label them as cannibalistic serial killers. But as a killer that gets too confident in thinking they'll never get caught, well, as you can imagine, that's not how it goes. Edwards was their 10th and final victim, and was able to escape because when Mrs. Edwards swung her shovel, she missed, and Sam wasn't around to help her because he was in the backyard digging a grave for their new victim, so he wasn't able to intervene. He wasn't able to stop the victim from escaping. Sam and his wife knew the police would be knocking at their door very soon because the one that got away would tell the police. Mr. and Mrs. Edwards were in a panic. They said to one another that they weren't going to the electric chair. So Sam handed his wife one of the 2 shotguns, and he placed the other gun to his head and told her to bring a chair from the kitchen, and he would bring one as well, sit side by side. When the police burst through the door, they would place the barrel of the shotguns in their mouth and blow their heads off. Mrs. Edwards knew this was the only way out, so she agreed with her husband's decision to end their lives. Sam and his wife sat patiently in the chairs, and what they expected to happen became a reality. The police were at their front door knocking. Sam yelled out, "Come in and get us." When the police burst through the door, before they could tell them to drop their weapons, Mr. and Mrs. Edwards both pulled the triggers on the shotguns and blew their heads clean off their shoulders. But since the killers were dead, there would be no lengthy trial and wasted taxpayers' money, so ending their lives did the taxpayers a favour. It was left to the forensic investigation team and the police to unravel the mystery of why the Edwards thought killing was their only option to put food on the table. After further investigation, the investigating team found 9 graves in the backyard and a freshly dug one for their 10th victim. The town was shocked when they heard the news of what went on in the Edwards House of Horrors. Edwards' home became a tourist attraction for the townspeople. Paranormal investigators and curious adjoining townspeople had to see for themselves of what went on in a sleepy little town that never experienced something as horrific that made a lovely couple turn into a cannibalistic couple of serial killers. The town became a hotspot for paranormal activity. Curious onlookers that wanted to know more of what went on in this sleepy little town of Cavendale. Legend has it, if you're brave enough to enter the home of the Edwards after midnight, enter the kitchen where they dismembered their victims, you will see the apparitions of Edwards dismembering one of the victims. But if you're not careful, their ghostly eyes will gaze upon your presence, and you just might become the next dismembered victim buried in their backyard. The end. And that's the end of that gruesome story. Very gruesome indeed. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and another tale from Stories. This one's called Zombie Squad. If you can hear any snoring in the background, it's one of the dogs, Storm or Dougal. At the moment it's Storm, but Dougal will probably start soon. Anyway, Zombie Squad. The United States of America finally spread itself too thin. And the almighty dollar that used to be the most valued became worthless. Many countries joined forces to bring America to its knees, just as they brought them to theirs. But instead of dropping bombs, they were experimenting with new, indestructible army force like none other. A dictator of the name of Dr. Death developed an army of zombies to parachute and land in every city, destroying everything in sight. Zombie squads marched into every city, killing everyone in sight. Buildings burned to the ground. But the US wasn't about to give up so easily. They fought with all the power they had, but at a substantial cost of innocent lives, just like any war. All hell was breaking loose, and panic was in every street. 4H bombs were dropped simultaneously from the north, south, east, and west of the United States by the zombies. The devastation was beyond belief, and what was once a land of opportunity became the land of death in one day. Just like all countries that took over other countries throughout the centuries will also fail in time. The United States put up a good fight, but destroying many of the zombie squads was hard. When the 4H bombs dropped, the fallout followed. Whatever survivors were left wouldn't be able to get any medical attention because every hospital was destroyed, so they would suffer an agonizing slow death from radiation poisoning. The next morning, the President of the United States and other members of the cabinet surfaced from an underground shelter below the White House to assess the damage, only to be greeted by the zombie squad and flown back to Dr. Death's country to be held prisoner and interrogated. After Dr. Death was through with them, they were used as his slaves, and if they refused, well, you guessed it, the zombies would get a very tasty meal. Dr. Death and his zombie squads were triumphant in taking over the United States. Dr. Death had to decide whether to make it a new home for himself. In this dystopian scenario, the United States is facing a dire situation with the rise of Dr. Death and his zombie squad, who managed to take over the country using unconventional and devastating means. The President and his cabinet are now imprisoned and subjected to the rule of Dr. Death. To counter this threat and restore the United States to its former glory, an elite force is dispatched into the country. This elite force is comprised of highly trained soldiers, strategists, and specialists, each with their own unique skills and expertise. The mission is twofold: to free the imprisoned president and cabinet members, and to formulate a plan to eliminate Dr. Death and his zombie squad. The elite force operates covertly, gathering intelligence on Dr. Death's operations, strengths, weaknesses. They engage in guerrilla warfare tactics, striking at key zombie squad strongholds, disrupting their communications and supply lines. As they gradually weaken the zombie squad's hold on the country, the elite force establishes contact with surviving pockets of resistance and civilian groups. The elite force then devises a two-pronged strategy. First, to rescue the imprisoned president and cabinet members from Dr. Death's clutches. Second, to launch a decisive assault on Dr. Death's headquarters. The rescue operation is meticulously planned, involving a daring nighttime raid on the facility where the president is being held. With precision and stealth, the elite force manages to free the captives and whisk them away to safety. With the president back in command, the United States government regains its legitimacy and authority. A united effort is made to gather remaining resources, rebuild communication networks, provide medical assistance to radiation survivors. Internal allies offer aid support. Recognizing the importance of restoring stability to a global superpower. Meanwhile, the elite force continues their campaign against Dr. Death's zombie squad, using intelligence gathered from the rescued cabinet members and civilians. They pinpoint the location of Dr. Death's headquarters. A joint operation involving the US military intelligence agencies and local resistance group is launched. This should neutralize them once and for all. After intense battles and strategies, the elite force manages to infiltrate Dr. Death's headquarters. A climatic confrontation unfolds, with the president leading the charge alongside the elite force. Through a combination of tactical brilliance and sheer determination, they do succeed in defeating Dr. Death and dismantling the zombie squad. With the eradication of the zombie squad and the removal of Dr. Death from power, the United States begins the arduous process of rebuilding. Efforts are focused on cleaning up the fallout, providing medical care, restoring infrastructure, and ensuring the safety and security of the nation. The global community leads assistance recognizing the resilience and determination of the American people. In time, the United States overcomes the dark period and emerges stronger than before. The story of the elite force's heroism and nation's recovery becomes a symbol of hope and unity for all those who faced adversity. The lessons learned from this harrowing experience serve as a reminder of the importance of cooperation, preparedness, and resilience in the face of even the most daunting challenges. The end. That's a very different story from Drac von Stoller. I thought it was going to have like more zombie, I don't know, like ripping apart or something, but it didn't. So that's an interesting one. Not one of my favourites, I have to admit, but still interesting. Thank you for listening and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the wonderful stories of Drac von Stoller, one of my most favourite authors. I say this every time. He does only short stories, but you can get them to read all free on Google Play. He charges nothing. You can literally go to Google Play Books, type in Drac von Stoller, which you'll see in the description. Bam. He's got so many books, honestly, there's lots to choose from. Anyway, this one is called Forced to Kill. Jack Stone always dreamed about fitting in with the crowd and being the most popular guy in school. The girls would drool over when he walked down the halls. Jack was brilliant when it came to his studies, but was frowned upon by other classmates because he only had to put little effort into making an A in the class. Jack was also the guy to go when it came to computers. The go-to guy, let's say. He was what you would call a nerd. But Jack didn't care what other classmates thought about him. He just wanted to be popular. Jack's life was about to change when he saw how everyone in the school hovered around Mark Edwards, the school's most popular guy that would snap his fingers and the girls would come running. Every day Jack would come up to Mark and ask if he could hang out with him so he could be popular with the girls. Mark just ignored him and told him to buzz off. Then Mark finally had all he could take with Jack's pestering, especially since it became a daily habit. Mark said, "Come here," and Jack came up to him with excitement on his face, thinking Mark would entertain the thoughts of them becoming best friends. But that wasn't going to happen. Jack could barely get any words out of his mouth when Mark grabbed him with both hands on the collar of his shirt, spit at his face, and threw him to the floor and said, "If you bother with me one more time, you'll wish you'd never been born. Got it? Now get lost. Leave me alone. Stupid little twerp." Jack got off the floor and said, "You'll pay for this." Mark laughed and said, "Here, twerp, catch this," and threw his textbook at Jack, hitting him upside his head. Jack stormed out of school, feeling like the biggest fool, thinking aloud, "What was I thinking?" Jack had thoughts of harming Mark, but he knew deep down that he didn't have the guts to follow through with such an evil idea. Even good people can kill, if pushed too far. When Jack returned the next day to school, there was laughter in the hallways, in his classes, making it impossible for him to stay focused. After school was dismissed, Jack approached Mark and said, "I used to look up to you. I wanted to hang with you, but since you've shunned me and made me a laughingstock in front of the school, I hope you die. Oh, I'm so scared, you piece of trash. Why don't you go outside and settle this with fists? Or are you a chicken? Said Mark. No, I'm not a chicken, replied Jack. They stepped outside, around the back of the school, and other students surrounded the two as they fought, and cheered on Mark as he pounded Jack's face into the ground. Then, as Jack was barely conscious, a ghost of a student that was killed by Mark years ago, that was covered up by Mark's father as the chief of the police of the town, appeared out of nowhere. But the only one that could see the ghost was Jack. The ghost said, "Listen to me carefully, and we'll make this punk pay for what he has done to us both. If you don't, you'll be dead in minutes." Jack said, "I've never hurt a fly in my life. There's no time to back out now. A few more punches, and you will be dead," explained the ghost. "When I get behind Mark, my hands will be around his neck, and trust me, he won't be moving, but gasping for his last breath. When I tell you to put your hands around his neck, the life will be choked out of him. Then you and the whole school can be rid of this scumbag once and for all," said the ghost. Jack did as the ghost told him. Mark gasped and gasped for air. The spirit had so much anger inside of him that he twisted Mark's head right off his shoulders. And the students all watched in horror as Mark's head was floating around the air, not knowing that it was a ghost. I mean, they couldn't see the ghost holding Mark's severed head in the air, but it was there, displayed for all to see. And then some of the students threw up at the sight of the terror that unfolded right before their eyes. Screams and panic followed as the students ran like a bat out of hell, in fear that this may happen to them. Jack thanked the ghost for saving his life. Then just as Jack walked away from the horrid sight, he turned to see if the spirit was still there. But it had vanished, and Jack said, "I guess he can finally rest now he got vengeance." When Jack walked in the front of the school, the police were waiting for him. Jack didn't put up a struggle with the police because there were too many witnesses to try and escape. Jack was tried and found guilty of Mark Edwards' death and was sentenced to death for his murder. Jack didn't care about getting the death penalty. He was just happy to know that no one else will have to go through what he and the ghost had to, well, in the town. And school can be a peaceful place. Well, it can be now. It used to be until he came along. But once again, it'll be without fear of a bully destroying someone's hopes and dreams. The trial was a somber affair. Many in town were shocked by the gruesome details of Mark's death. Some believed Jack's story about the vengeful ghost, while others thought he'd fabricated it as a defense. Nevertheless, the evidence was clear, and Jack was found guilty. As the days passed, the town remained divided on whether justice had truly been served. In prison, Jack spent his time reflecting on the events that had led him to this point. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had become a pawn in a ghost's quest for revenge. He questioned whether he should have followed the spirit's instructions, even if it meant putting an end to Mark's reign of terror. Over time, some details came to light that supported Jack's claims about the ghost. A few students admitted to seeing strange and unexplainable occurrences on the day of the fight. It was as if the spirit had left a trace of its presence behind. However, this didn't change the legal outcome. Jack's conviction still stood. As the execution date approached, a local journalist began digging deeper into the story. She interviewed witnesses, classmates, and even some of Mark's previous victims. The journalist uncovered a pattern of abuse and cruelty that Mark had inflicted upon others, revealing a darker side to his popular persona. The article shed new light on the events leading up to that fateful day, making the case more complex than anyone had initially thought. Public opinion began to shift. Calls for re-examination of the evidence grew louder. People started questioning whether Jack's actions were truly premeditated murder or a desperate act of self-defense against a relentless tormentor. The town was divided once again, but this time it was over whether Jack's punishment was just. The pressure mounted, and eventually the case caught the attention of an innocent project group dedicated to re-evaluating questionable convictions. They took on Jack's case, bringing in experts that would analyse the evidence, explore the possibility of a coerced confession due to an alleged ghost's influence. After months of investigation, the Innocent Project uncovered new evidence that cast doubt on Jack's guilt. They presented compelling arguments about the paranormal experiences witnessed by multiple students and the psychological toll of long-term bullying. The court was compelled to reopen the case, and eventually Jack's conviction was overturned. Released from prison, Jack faced a mixed reception from the town. Some were relieved that justice was finally being served, while others were still sceptical, believing that he had somehow manipulated the situation in his favour. Jack, now a changed man, didn't seek revenge against those who doubted him. Instead, he used his experience to advocate for anti-bullying programs and mental health awareness in schools. In the end, the story of Jack Stone became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked bullying and the complexities of justice. The town underwent a process of healing and reflection as they grappled with their own role in Mark's reign of terror and Jack's wrongful conviction. And as time went on, the ghostly presence who had once sought vengeance seemed to fade away, perhaps finally finding peace in the resolution of the tangled web of events that had unfolded. The end. And of course, that is a strange story, right? A ghost is involved with the death of someone. But where it does show us is the power of the people. When it comes to the power of the people and the justice system, we can be heard and changes can be made. Never underestimate the power of the people. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the collection of Drachmon's Dollar Stories. If you hear any snoring in the background, it's just Storm. The next story is called Grim Reaper. Sir Jacob was a well-respected knight, a man of great wealth, but he was also a man of many secrets. He had lived in an old dark castle for many years, and despite his wealth and status, he lived a very lonely life. His wife had passed away years ago. He had no children to carry on his name. He'd always been afraid of death and what would happen to him after he died. Sir Jacob had been a religious man and always believed in the afterlife, but he had also heard rumours of a place called hell. He'd never been a wicked man, but he knew he had made mistakes in his life, and he feared that those mistakes would be his downfall. As he sat alone in his castle, as Sir Jacob thought about all the things he had done in his life, he had fought in many battles and killed many men, but he had done it all in the name of his king and his country. He'd also made some bad business decisions that had cost him a great deal of money, but he'd never cheated anyone or done anything illegal. He had always tried to do what was right, but he knew that sometimes even the best of intentions can lead to terrible consequences. Sir Jacob had spent many years reading and studying the Bible, and he knew that he had to make peace with his Maker before he died. He'd always believed that if he lived a good life, he'd go to heaven. But now that he was facing death, he wasn't so sure. He'd always been afraid of the unknown, and now he was facing the ultimate unknown. As the Grim Reaper took his soul, Sir Jacob's body fell to the ground, lifeless. The Grim Reaper collected Jacob's soul and placed it in his collection. As he drove up into the distance, Sir Jacob's soul felt lost and alone. He didn't know what he was going to do, where he was going, what was going to happen to him, but he knew he had to face whatever lay ahead. As he travelled with the Grim Reaper, Sir Jacob's soul began to reflect on his life. He thought about all the things he'd done, all the things he'd left undone. He thought about the people he had loved, the people he had hurt. He thought about his wife and wondered if she was waiting for him in heaven. Eventually, the Grim Reaper stopped at a place that Sir Jacob recognised as the gates of hell. The Grim Reaper opened the gates. Sir Jacob's soul was forced to enter. As he walked through the gates, he was overwhelmed by the smell of sulphur and the sound of screams. He knew that he was in hell. There was no turning back. For years, Sir Jacob's soul was tormented by the demons of hell. He was forced to relive his worst moments over and over again. He was haunted by people he had killed, and he was reminded of all the mistakes he had made. He knew that he deserved to be in hell, but he also knew that he didn't want to spend eternity there. As time passed, Sir Jacob's soul began to change. He started to repent for his sins and ask for forgiveness. He knew that he could never make up for the things he had done, but he hoped that by changing his ways, he could make a difference. Eventually, his soul became so pure that the demons of hell could no longer torment him. He found peace in a place of chaos and despair. Years passed. Sir Jacob's scroll continued to grow and evolve. Eventually, the Grim Reaper came for him again, but this time he was not afraid. He knew that he had done everything he could to make amends for his past. He was ready to face whatever place the Grim Reaper would take him to. But he knew the place would not be hell. Not this time, but heaven. Only the Grim Reaper knows that. And let's hope Sir Jacob is right. Sir Jacob's existence in realm beyond had transformed from one of the torment to one of redemption. The tormentor's soul that had entered hell with guilt and fear had, over time, undergone a profound change. The relentless introspection and the sincere repentance he had to undertake purified his spirit, allowing it to rise above the internal suffering that once consumed him. In the face of darkness, he had discovered an inner light, and that light guided him towards salvation. As he journeyed with the Grim Reaper once more, the landscape around him shifted. The oppression of the atmosphere and sulphur and screams gave way to serene and ethereal beauty. The air was fragrant with sweet scents. The sound of distant, harmonious melodies filled the space. It was a realm where the souls of the virtuous found solace and joy, a realm known as heaven. The gates of heaven, bathed in radiant light, welcomed Sir Jacob's soul. As he crossed the threshold, a profound sense of tranquility washed over him. He felt weightless, as if the burdens that had plagued him in life had been lifted. Before him stood a breathtaking expanse of beauty and serenity, an eternal paradise that he had longed for. In this realm of boundless love and grace, Sir Jacob's soul encountered others who had also journeyed from the mortal realm. Loved ones he had lost, friends he had known, and even soldiers he had fought alongside in great battles greeted him with smiles. There was no judgment, no condemnation, only a profound sense of belonging and acceptance. Among those who welcomed him was his wife, a vision of radiant beauty. Her eyes held a depth of understanding that transcended words. She embraced him, and in that embrace he felt a sense of completeness that he had never experienced before. The pain of separation in life was replaced by a reunion that defied the boundaries of mortality. As Sir Jacob's soul settled into the embrace of heaven, he found himself surrounded by knowledge and wisdom that extended far beyond earthly understanding. He engaged in conversations with souls who had lived through various epochs, sharing insights and perspectives that had expanded his consciousness. He realized that the journey of the soul was a continuous cycle of growth and learning, and heaven was a place of perpetual transformation. But amidst the joy and the serenity of heaven, Sir Jacob's soul remained reflective. He realized that his transformation had been possible because he'd taken responsibility for his actions, confronted his mistakes, sought redemption. The notion of divine forgiveness took on a profound meaning, one that required a genuine change of heart and a commitment to rectifying the wrongs committed. In his celestial explorations, Sir Jacob's soul discovered that heaven was not merely a realm of passive contentment. Souls engaged in creative endeavors, nurturing gardens of unimaginable beauty, crafted works of art that transcended mortal comprehension. Each soul contributed to the harmonious tapestry of the afterlife. Sir Jacob found purpose in these creative expressions. As eternity stretched before him, Sir Jacob's soul continued to evolve, to learn, and to contribute to the splendor of heaven. His existence was no longer defined by fear or loneliness. Instead, he embraced the boundless opportunities for growth and connection. He found that the afterlife was not a stagnant existence, but a dynamic journey that mirrored the complexion of life, albeit a more profound and enlightened form. Back in the world of the living, the legend of Sir Jacob persisted. The old dark castle, once shrouded in mystery, came to be associated with tales of redemption and salvation. Stories whispered about a knight who had faced his own demons and emerged from the depths of hell with a soul transformed by grace. His tale served as a reminder that, even in the face of darkness, there was always potential for redemption and renewal. Generations passed. The tale of Sir Jacob became woven in the fabric of Gravendale's lore. His journey from guilt to redemption began a symbol of hope for those facing their own struggles and their uncertainties. The castle, once a place of solitude and secret, transformed into a symbol of transformation and transcendence, a beacon that reminded all who gazed upon it, even the darkest paths could lead to light. And so, the story of Sir Jacob, the well-respected knight, the tormented soul, and the redeemed spirit, continued to echo through the annals of time. It was a tale that transcended the boundaries of mortality, reminding each generation that the journey of the soul was a tapestry of complexities, challenges, and ultimately the potential for profound growth and renewal. And that is the end of that story from Stoller. The next story is called The Castle of Black Shadows. Kathy and Jim Patterson were just a little too eager to settle down and start a new family. They jumped into the first place they saw, Zenmore Castle, unaware of what lies behind the castle walls. And Kathy was a school teacher, and her husband Jim was a chemist. Kathy and Jim had it all: money, love, and the pursuit of happiness. The Pattersons felt Castle Denmore would be a dream come true, but in actuality, it would lead them both down a road of torment and death. Mr. Patterson's dream was to stumble upon a mad scientist laboratory in the lower level of the castle. His wife told him, "I'll check the upstairs rooms, you explore the creepy dungeon." And Kathy, with a chuckle, said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." And as Mr. Patterson was exploring the lower level of the castle, he felt chills go up and down his spine. All of a sudden, his dream was about to come true. A door painted black with an etching of a skull and crossbones. He said to himself, "Oh my, this could be my dream come true. If there's a laboratory behind the door, I'll be able to pretend I'm a mad scientist. You know, like Dr. Frankenstein, do experiments." Jim started laughing like he was a mad scientist. His dream would eventually come true, but at a high cost. There was a black shadow figure lurking inside the room, waiting to possess the unlucky soul that dare venture into the room of evil. Jim tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. It was also padlocked. He called the realtor to ask about the black door. Mr. Patterson proceeded onward with exploring the rest of the lower level of the castle, and just a little further down from the room with the black door was another one painted red. The entrance to the room wasn't locked, so he entered and was amazed at what he saw. The room had torture devices that could have been used to torture people long ago. Then, as he turned to leave the room, he noticed something at the corner of his eye that looked like a shadowy black figure. And Mr. Patterson brushed it off. It was just his imagination playing tricks on him. Since it was daytime, all the lights were on in the castle, there was no reason for him to be afraid. As Mr. Patterson was passing by one of the rooms on the upper level of the castle, she thought she heard someone talking. When she opened the door to investigate, there was no one in the room. But she did notice a black shadow of a figure across the room that gave her the willies. Mr. Patterson was getting hungry, so he decided to catch up with his wife and see what kind of food they could muster up in the kitchen. He checked the mysterious black door to see it was still locked, and it was. He gave up and went upstairs to fetch his wife. "Kathy, did you find anything interesting in any of the rooms?" asked Jim. "I'm not sure, but I thought I heard someone talking in one of the rooms that I passed by. I think I noticed a black shadow or figure float across the room. But maybe I'm seeing things," replied Kathy. "How was your tour of the castle? Did you find your laboratory?" asked Kathy. "Well, Mine was exciting. I found what looks like a torture chamber, but what caught my eye was this door painted black. There's some bizarre etching of a skull and crossbones on the door. I tried to open it, but it was locked, exclaimed Jim. Maybe you should just leave it locked. There might be a ghost in there. Kathy laughed. Don't be silly. There are no such things as ghosts. I'm going to go down there tonight, after I ask the realtor where the key is. And if he doesn't know of none, then I'll get a crowbar and break his side, so I can ease my mind of what is really behind that door, said Jim. Why don't we go into the kitchen and see what's in the refrigerator? It's lunchtime and I'm starving, said Jim. His stomach was rumbling. I'm not that hungry, but I'll sit and watch you eat so you can get your strength up for your ghost hunting tonight, giggled Kathy. You're just going to rub it in. Funny girl, said Jim with a smirk on his face. As Jim was looking inside the fridge for some food, he told his wife that he hopes there's a laboratory behind the black door. It would be fun, since he's a chemist. I can put on my white lab coat and pretend I'm a mad scientist working on Frankenstein. You'll be my lab assistant, said Jim, jokingly to Kathy. Good luck, Dr. Frankenstein, but I'm not interested in being your lab rat assistant. I want to pass time in the castle's library, reading my books. You know how much I like to read. If you do find a laboratory, you found what you're looking for, and I found what I'm looking for, so we both will be happy. Okay, I got your point, replied Jim. They both sat down at the kitchen table to eat. The light above the table started flickering. Then all of a sudden one of the cabinet doors opened and closed on its own. Kathy and Jim said together, What's going on here? Is there someone in the castle trying to scare us out of our new home? Well, whoever's doing this, the Pattersons don't scare so easily. Look who's the scared one, laughed Jim. Shut up. It's not funny, Jim. Sorry, but it was okay when you made fun of me and not okay when I make fun of you, replied Jim, with an upset look on his face. Jim, I'm beginning to have second thoughts about this place. Maybe we should have taken a little more time searching for our dream home. We didn't need a place this large, especially a castle, said Kathy with tears in her eyes. Look, we both had a long drive and were tired, said Jim as he was consoling her. Okay, darling. I apologize for being so upset with you. You're right. I am exhausted, and I'd like to lay down for a nap. Why don't you go check out the mysterious black door while I'm taking a nap? Said Kathy as she yawned. I think that sounds like a good idea. I'll fill you in with what lies behind that black door in a couple of hours, said Jim. He was very excited. Jim kissed his wife on the forehead. She fell fast asleep. Jim went outside the castle to get a crowbar from the trunk of his car. Because when he did get in touch with the realtor on the phone, the realtor had no clue why the door was locked, or aware of any other keys beside the key to the front door he gave Jim. So he took his crowbar down to the lower level, to the mysterious room, pried off the padlock on the painted black door. Jim was so excited to finally see what was behind the mysterious door. Not mind the consequences that lie ahead of him, Jim said, with such excitement on his face. Please be a lavatory behind this door. Jim slid the crowbar in the latch, and with a great force broke the latch and the lock. The door slowly opened with a loud creaking noise. It was dark inside, but Jim was prepared for anything. Sure it's dark in here. Wow. Can't be real. There's an operating table. And look, a lab coat and glasses, glass beakers and chemicals. Everything I need to be a mad scientist, said Jim, with a big smile on his face. As Kathy was sleeping soundly upstairs, unbeknownst to them both, their lives were about to change forever. Jim finally found the light switch, turned on the light, only to see a musty old laboratory that hadn't seen daylight in years. That was about to change when Jim put on the lab coat and glasses. As Jim was putting on the dusty lab coat, something was happening that was supernatural. Jim felt his voice change. Then some force was drawing him to the eyeglasses and the table. Jim went over the table and picked up the glasses and put them on. Then all hell broke loose. The black shadow figure he just brushed off as nothing took over Jim's whole existence. Now the shadowy black figure could once more bring his Frankenstein experiments back to life. The dusty old laboratory changed from dusty old laboratory to the way it looked 100 years ago, when a mad scientist by the name of Archon experimented and tortured hundreds of people that were drifters looking for a place of refuge. Jim wasn't Jim Patterson anymore. He was now the mad scientist. Archon, ready to torture his next victim to death with his razor-sharp instruments. Kathy was unaware of what evil was lurking down behind the black painted door. The Jim had just gone inside. And just as Kathy was waking up from a long-awaited nap, Archon, the mad scientist, was bending over the top of her body with his razor-sharp scalpel ready to cut. Kathy started screaming. "What are you doing, Jim? Why are you dressed that way? Get that scalpel out of my face." "My name is not Jim. It is Archon, and I'm a scientist. You look like a perfect specimen for my next experiment." "Jim, stop. This little game you're playing, I don't find it funny." "It looks like you found your laboratory," said Kathy, all shook up. "Stop calling me Jim. I'm through with your blabbering. I need to get back to work. Now, this won't hurt a bit. Just one quick slit of the throat, and you'll be lying on my operating table," said Archon. He had the look of evil in his eyes. Archon held Kathy down on the bed as she squirmed, kicked, and screamed. Archon quickly slit Kathy's throat, almost severing her head. Jim's wish came true. He found his laboratory, became a mad scientist, but at such a high cost. Jim lost his wife, and the life he once knew, when they both stepped inside Denmore Castle. Jim's possessed body by Archon, the mad scientist, carried out his experiments until his death by the hands of one of those experiments gone bad. Castle Denmore was burnt to the ground by the townspeople of frustrations over the senseless killings of the loved ones. Castle Denmore was no more, and the reign of terror could finally rest in the smouldering ashes that once brought so much pain. And that's the next story from Dragon Stoller. The next story is called The House of Death. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson had been searching for their dream home for many years, with little luck, and thought that if they were to look in the countryside area instead of the city, they could get more land and a house for their book. Mr. Jackson was a handyman, so if the house needed repairs, he knew how to fix it back up to its original beauty. He asked his wife to come along with him to look at some houses in the country after he got off work. Of course, Mrs. Jackson said yes, and Mr. Jackson arrived home around 3 p.m., and Mrs. Jackson was waiting for her husband in the living room, watching her favourite soap opera. Mr. Jackson entered the front door of his house, called out to his wife, "Betty, you ready to go house hunting?" "Yes, Mike, I'm ready to go." Mike and Betty got in their car and drove to the country in search of their dream home. They were having a good time driving in the country and seeing the beautiful green pastures, cattle, and impressive mansions. The weather was warm and sunny with a slight breeze, just over a little 70 degrees. The Jacksons couldn't have picked a perfect day to search for their dream home. "Slow down, honey. I think this may be the one," said Betty. Mike pulled into the front gate of a mansion, put the car in park, got out of the car, opened the gate, and got back in the car and drove to the front of the estate. Mike put the car in park and shut off the engine and said, "Darling, if the outside of this mansion looks as good as the inside, we'll do everything in our power to get this home." "Mike, I'm so excited. I almost lost my breath when I gazed upon this beautiful mansion." Mike got out of the car and went over and opened Betty's car door and went to the front door to see if anyone was home. Just as Mike knocked on the door, there was an envelope next to his foot. Mike picked up the envelope, opened it, and read it aloud to his wife, Betty. "Letter says the owner is out of the country, and if you're inquiring on purchasing the mansion, to call this number. The realtor will be happy to show us the mansion." "Call the realtor, Mike. Maybe you can still come. It's only 4 o'clock," asked Betty. Mike gave the realtor a call. The realtor said he was 15 minutes away and would be happy to show the Jacksons the home. "Mike, darling, I'm so glad you got hold of the realtor." Betty was all smiles. "Well, since it's going to take the realtor about 15 minutes to get here, why don't we look at the backyard? The rest of the property," said Mike. That's fine with me. Betty and Mike took a stroll around the property and liked what they saw. Betty kissed her husband on the cheek and said, I'm glad you decided to find a home in the country instead of the city. I hope we get this place. I feel like we belong here, said Betty. Betty and Mike were unaware of the evil inside the mansion that was waiting to devour them both. Finally, the realtor arrived on time, and Jacksons met the realtor as he pulled in the front of the mansion. The realtor said, Hi, I'm Dave. You must be Mike, and this must be your lovely wife. Yes, Dave, this is my wife, Betty, said Mike. Well, is everyone ready to see inside of the mansion? Asked Dave. Yes, sir, we're ready. The realtor opened the front door and stepped inside the mansion. Betty and Mike followed right behind him. Let me tell you a little bit about the history behind this beautiful mansion. The mansion was built in 1775 and is known as the birthplace of Count Drac von Stoller, before he moved on with his family to Ireland. I'm not sure of the exact date that Drac von Stoller family settled in Ireland. If you were to find any records during that period on Drac von Stoller's family now, it probably won't be legible, exclaimed Dave. You're probably going to be shocked when I tell you the price of the mansion, said Dave. Well, if it's going to be in the millions, then I think we should probably look elsewhere, said Betty. Hold on just a minute before you turn away. Let me ask you a question. How much are you willing to pay for the fully furnished mansion? Asked Dave in a friendly manner. Mike, you tell Dave what we can afford. You're the one that handles the money anyway, said Betty. Well, Dave, I was thinking about the most we could afford is 500,000. I know you probably think you have to be mine to think the owner would settle for such a low-ball figure, said Mike. It's sold. Now you can both move in, said Dave. You for real? Said Mike and Betty. Write me a cheque for 500,000, and the deed to the house is yours, said Dave. Mike and Betty went to the kitchen table to fill out the necessary paperwork, handed over a cheque to 500,000 to the realtor. The realtor gave Mike the keys to the mansion. They shook hands. Dave left very quickly out the door. Dave held the cheque in the air, kissed the cheque, and said, This is the best piece of property that I've ever sold, because everyone dies, and I'm the only realtor in the small town. So I'm always going to make a nice commission off the sale. Dave forgot to mention one thing to the Jacksons, and that one thing was the house was haunted. Every occupant had died in the mansion because of what lies in the family crypt. All the occupants do when they move in. They like to explore the new home, even though the family crypt is padlocked. For no reason, that doesn't stop the curious owner from saying, This is my house and I've got every right to know what's behind that locked door. Once they wipe the dust off the coffin, they just go to see who or what is in the coffin, and when they open the coffin, the new owners of the mansion get welcomed by none other than Drac von Stoller, the Prince of Darkness. Drac von Stoller starts by saying to the new owner, I bid you welcome, you must be the new owner. As Drac von Stoller is saying these words to the new owner, he has his hand around their throat. And as the other occupant tries to leave the crypt, the door slams shut. Drac von Stoller, his thirst for blood quenched, not once but twice. When Drac von Stoller has quenched his thirst from victims, he'll walk upstairs to where a book is lying in the study. Drac will sit down and record the occupant's name in his guest book, as he's always done for over 200 years. When he's done writing in the guest book, he stands up, stretches, and says, That quenches my thirst. I guess I'll go back down in the family crypt and lay down in my coffin, wait for Dave to bring in the next occupants to my mansion. And that is the next story. The next story is called Guillotine. Come on, come all the greatest show on earth, says the ringmaster of the Circus of Horrors. Every Halloween, the town of Deadsville holds their annual Circus of Horrors that brings in tourists from all over the world. The Circus of Horrors was the only real moneymaker for the town of Deadsville. Desville had one post office, one church, one store, etc., so there wasn't very much excitement in this little town. Though the town of Deadsville wasn't dead, hence the name, and just like everything this world has to offer in everyday life, things can get rather boring unless you think up new ideas that will stand out to make the tourists want more. Deadsville's Circus of Horrors attendance was dwindling. There was no new exciting attractions. Till one day, when an eccentric old man pulled up in a dusty old van and asked to see the ringmaster of the Circus of Horrors. The ringmaster said, "What do you want from me, old man? Can't you see I'm busy right now? I don't have time to be messing around this place. This better be not a waste of my time. What is it you want? Come here, and I'll show you. I promise you won't be disappointed," said the excited old man. The ringmaster followed the old man to the van to see what he wanted to show him. The old man opened the back door of the van, and the old man said, "What do you think?" The ringmaster said, "It looks like some wooden piece of furniture. You mean to tell me you interrupted my busy work schedule for this? I should have you thrown out of my circus right now." The old man yelled, "Wait! Don't leave yet. You haven't seen what this wooden structure you call a piece of furniture is. Just bear with me for another minute, and I promise you won't be disappointed." "All right, make it snappy. I haven't got all day," said the angry ringmaster. "Would you believe it if I told you this will be the best main attraction of your circus, by far," said the old man. "You've got to be kidding," replied the ringmaster. "First, get a couple of strong men to help me get it out of the van. I will tell you all about it," explained the old man. "Look, if this is some joke, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, old man." The ringmaster got two of his strongest men, Hector and Hugo, to pull the large piece of wood structure out of the van. "Hugo," asked the ringmaster, "where do you want us to put it?" The ringmaster replied, "Bring it inside the tent behind you, and we'll let the old man tell us why this piece of wood is going to be our main Halloween attraction." "Okay," said the old man. "Are you ready, ringmaster?" "I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be. You've only wasted about an hour of my time. What's a few more minutes?" said the frustrated ringmaster. The old man removed the cover from the wooden structure and said, "What do you think?" The ringmaster laughed. "It's just a guillotine. I was expecting something better than this. You need to leave so I can get back to work." The old man, being frustrated with the ringmaster, said, "I'm sorry that you feel that I've wasted your time. I see you're upset at me. But let me tell you why this guillotine will be the main attraction and moneymaker for your Circus of Horrors. The guillotine is from medieval times and is one of its kind, which makes this a rare find. The guillotine has been used at every famous execution, and there's more." "I'm listening, old man," said the ringmaster with his arms folded. "With this guillotine, you get your executioner," said the old man. "Where? I don't see an executioner," laughed the ringmaster. "Oh, but you will. Could I have a word with you alone?" said the old man. "Okay, Hector and Hugo, come back in 20 minutes, said the ringmaster. "Okay, old man, we're alone. Let's hear it." The old man handed the ringmaster an envelope. "What's this?" asked the ringmaster. "Open the envelope and read what it says to me," said the old man. "Whoever says the incantation aloud, as written in this letter word for word, will receive an abundance of wealth. To receive an abundance of wealth, you must fulfill the executioner's demands. If not, the executioner will have your head." The ringmaster said with an excited look on his face, "What do I got to lose? Just my head." He laughed out loud. The old man said in a serious voice, "Go ahead and read the incantation. Your life will be rich beyond your wildest dreams." As the ringmaster was reading the mantra aloud, something strange was happening. The tent pulled a fog of smoke. Within minutes, the fog cleared and the executioner appeared next to the guillotine. "Who summons me?" said the tall, 250-pound executioner, with a black hood covering his head, blazing red eyes peering from the holes cut out of a mask. "It is I," said the fearless ringmaster. As the ringmaster turned to ask the old man what's next, the old man was already in the van with the key and the ignition, and he drove off. The ringmaster ran out of the tent yelling, "What's next? What's next, old man?" As the ringmaster was running behind the old man's van, asking him what to do, the old man stuck his head out of the window of the van and said, "The executioner will tell you. The executioner will tell." Then the van sped off down the dirt road, leaving the ringmaster bent over with his hands on his knees, gasping for breath. The ringmaster walked back to the tent to ask the executioner what his plans were, and when he received his abundance of wealth, the executioner's response was, "You will not receive any money until you meet my demands." "Okay, let's get on with it," said the ringmaster, greed in his eyes. "First thing you do is search for people that are loners. Tell them they will be part of the main attraction at the Circus of Horrors. Tell them they will get rewarded for their participation with the act," said the executioner. "Sounds pretty easy to me. I'll just tell you go and act to round up some loners. Let the money roll in," said the ringmaster. "Not so fast. You and only you are to bring in these loners. If I find out that you haven't lived up to our agreement, I'm sure that my guillotine and I can come up with something, if you know what I mean," said the executioner. The executioner released the rope to the guillotine. The blade came down on a melon that had been placed where the head goes. The blade cut right through it as the executioner was laughing. "You have 1 hour to bring in someone for the main attraction," said the executioner. The ringmaster left the tent, got into his car, drove to a local tavern to bring in someone for the main attraction. The ringmaster found an old drunk man sitting in a dark corner of the bar, passed out from too many drinks. "This man'll do just fine." The ringmaster tapped the old man on the shoulder. The old man raised his head off the table and started mumbling, and lowered his head back down to the table and started snoring. The ringmaster said eagerly, "Looks like it's going to take more than a tap on the shoulder to wake up this drunk man." The ringmaster got a pitcher of beer in one hand, a pitcher of cold water in the other hand, and placed them both down on the table. The ringmaster picked up the cold water and poured it over the top of the old man's head. The old man looked up and in a slurred voice said, "Why did you do that?" The ringmaster replied, "Because I've got some good news for you, and I will be the main attraction at my Circus of Horrors. Don't worry, you'll get paid for your participation so that you can buy lots of beer." "Oh, sounds like an offer I can't refuse," said the drunken old man. "Okay, old man, do we got a deal? Or not?" replied the greedy ringmaster. "You bet we do. Drink up. I'll drive you to my Circus of Horrors," said the money-hungry ringmaster. It only took the old man about 5 minutes, and a few belches in between. They were on their way to their first show of the main attraction, the guillotine. When they arrived at the circus, the ringmaster had to get Hugo and Hector to bring the old drunk man into the tent for the main attraction. Hector and Hugo placed the old man's body on the guillotine and gave him a few more sips of beer. Then the old man passed out drunk. Mobs of curious people flocked to the tent with their tickets to get the thrill of their lives. It was a standing room only. The ringmaster announced the main attraction of the guillotine. Then with a drum roll, and everyone's heart pounding with excitement, the executioner released the rope, holding the blade way above the man's head. Within seconds, the old man's head rolled off into a bucket. The executioner pulled down a lever, and the old man's torso went down into a fiery pit of Hades. The executioner picked up the old man's head out of the bucket to show the puzzled onlookers. Some ran out of the tent screaming while others were scratching their heads in disbelief. "This is not real. It can't be real." The ringmaster reassured the crowd that it's part of the act, and not to worry, it's just an illusion. The ringmaster thanked everyone for coming to see the main attraction, and to make sure, come see the show again and tell your friends about the Circus of Horrors. This lasts through October. The ringmaster questioned the execution about where all the people in the guillotine attraction go. The executioner's response was, "Let's say they let the act go to the Reds." "Executioner, I'm getting a little tired of this act, and besides, I do believe we had an agreement that if I met your demands, I would be rewarded with great wealth, but I'm beginning to think it's all just a lie." The executioner replied, You'll be rewarded as soon as you complete. Run of the main attraction is complete. The main attraction ends at the stroke of midnight on Halloween night. The guillotine and I will vanish, and a briefcase full of $1,000 bills will be yours for your services renders. How does that sound? Well, if you put it that way, I guess it's not a bad deal after all. The ringmaster was tricked by the executioner to bring in innocent people to the attraction for the pleasure of cutting their heads off and sending the bodies to Hades, the lake of fire. There would be no money, just debt for the ringmaster. Finally, October the 31st came, and it was the last day of the main attraction. The ringmaster checked his watch and said to himself, just 3 more hours to go, and I'll be the wealthiest man in town. Won't have to worry about a thing. The ringmaster's dreams were about to vanish as fast as they entered his mind. The ringmaster rechecked his watch and said to the executioner, I'm excited to receive this wealth you are about to give me. I'm just a loss for words. The executioner laughed under his breath. A loss for words isn't the only thing you'll be losing. Your head too. The executioner placed the briefcase at the top of a bucket where the severed head dropped into it and said, Ringmaster, you've done a fine job for me. Now it's time to get what's coming to you. The ringmaster put one knee on the guillotine, and the executioner said, Why don't you lie down on the guillotine and open the briefcase so we both can see all the money? Like a dummy, the ringmaster did lay down. He laid down on the guillotine, and just as the ringmaster popped the other latch to open the briefcase to see what he thought would encase a wealth beyond his imagination, the executioner released the rope holding the guillotine's blade stationary, and before the ringmaster had a chance to get out of harm's way, his head rolled off of the briefcase and onto the floor. The executioner was laughing hysterically, calling the ringmaster a fool. Then the executioner pulled down the lever, sending the ringmaster's body into Hades and the hell of... Yes, the blazing hell of fire, that is. The executioner opened the briefcase and picked up the ringmaster's head and said, Look, ringmaster, there's no money. What a silly fool to believe an executioner could grant a wish. The executioner's guillotine vanished into thin air. The entrance to Hades was sealed, but will open back up when the next fool comes along and meets the old man with the guillotine. Of course it would. And of course it took it in by the executioner's bidding. The ringmaster had no idea the executioner and the old man were in this little scheme together. The old man wasn't an old man. It was Satan doing what is best to deceive people, taking their souls to the lake of fire of Hades forever. The moral to the story is, if it's too good to be true, then, well, it is. And those are another selection of stories from Dracmonstola. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another story by Dracmonstola. I say another story, we may do more than one in this section, but they're all by Dracmonstola. If you hear any snoring in the background, that's just Storm. And let's get into the first story. This one's called, What If the Devil Created Earth? In the beginning, the devil created hell and earth. The skies were red as fire. The oceans and seas ran deep with blood. The devil liked what he created. So he created a demon called Beelzebub, meaning Prince of Demons, in his likeness, and set him out into the world to enjoy the hell that was created for him. The devil explained to Beelzebub, Whatever you do, don't eat fruit from the garden of hell. Beelzebub asked, Why, master? It looks tasty. The devil explained, If you do, you won't see the wonderful hell that I've created for you. To make sure you don't eat of the tree, I've created gargoyles to guard the tree so you won't be tempted at its fruit. Everything was going well until Beelzebub was feeling lonely and wanted companionship. Beelzebub asked the devil, Is there any way you could create someone to keep me company while I enjoy the hell you have created? If this will make hell better for you, so be it. I will make a female as your companion. I will name her Mania, which means goddess of hell. She will bear demon children for you, both to bring up in this hell I have created. Now go into hell and have yourselves a hell of a time, said the devil. Beelzebub and his new female companion ventured off into the new planet, hell on earth. Not long after Beelzebub and Mania were enjoying life on hell's earth, Mania convinced Beelzebub to eat from the forbidden tree. And when they did, they were ashamed at how grotesque they looked and went to hide in the lake of fire. One of the devil's gargoyles went on his way to tell the devil about what Beelzebub and Mania had done at the forbidden tree. When the gargoyle told the devil let out a roar that echoed across the lake of fire. Beelzebub and Mania were frightened for their lives. The devil spread out his wings and flew to the lake of fire to let Beelzebub and Mania know what the consequences were, but disobeying their creator, the devil. The devil swooped over the heads of Beelzebub and Mania, cursing them and telling them to get out of the lake of fire and face the consequences for disobeying their master. Beelzebub and Mania got their frightened bodies out of the lake of fire. Beelzebub said, Mania tricked me into eating the forbidden fruit from the tree. Please forgive me, master. The devil replied, Shut your big fat mouths and listen carefully to what I'm going to say, or I'll set both your asses on fire. Things will never be the same for you from this day forward, and the beautiful hell that I created for you both will cease to exist. I'm going to put both of you into a deep sleep, and when you both wake up in 7 days, the hell on earth you both once knew will not exist in your minds. Many for what you have done, you will no longer be the goddess of hell, and Beelzebub will no longer be the prince of demons. Many, you will also bear demon children and be crippled for life. You will be in great pain for the rest of your lives. You will no longer be able to swim in the lake of fire. If you so much as put a big toe in the lake of fire, your flesh will melt down to the bone. I hope you both have a great time in the new hell on earth I've created. The devil laughed and said, You stupid fools. You both had it all and threw it away over a piece of fruit from the forbidden tree, and I told you both not to eat from it. The devil flew off laughing and saying, Stupid fools, you silly fools, and headed back to his palace, while Mania and Beelzebub fend for themselves in the horror that awaits them both in the new hell on earth. Beelzebub and Mania set out into the hell that the devil had created for their unruly behavior. The devil wasn't kidding around. When he created the new hell for them both, Mania and Beelzebub felt pain beyond their wildest dreams. Flesh-eating bugs were continually attacking them as their screams went unnoticed by any living creature that the devil created. Many months went by and Mania brought forth their first-born demon child. Mania said, Let's name him Ga'ap, meaning Prince of Hell. I like that name, said Beelzebub. When Ga'ap was about 3 years old, he wasn't delighted, doing things alone while his father and mother were out overseeing that hell on earth was running out of control. One day, while Ga'ap's mother was getting ready to venture out into hell, Ga'ap tugged on his mother's dress and said, Mother, can you and father give me a brother demon so we can play in this wonderful place? Ga'ap's mother answered, I think that would be a good idea. You will have a playmate to keep you company. I'll run it by your father when he gets home and see what he thinks. Now whatever you do, don't go swimming in the lake of fire, and when you get up the next morning, your father and I will give you the news. Morning came. Ga'ap was excited to hear the news, and it was just what he asked. Ga'ap's father, Beelzebub, said, Son, we will give you a demon brother, so you'll have someone to play with and explore this wonderful hell that was created for us all. Many more months later, Ga'ap's mother, Mania, gave birth to a boy demon child, and named him Cressil, meaning demon of impurity and laziness. Everything was going well for a few months, with Cressil and Ga'ap playing together, until Cressil started losing interest in his brother. Ga'ap's companionship and thought that Cressil was getting more attention from his mother and father than Ga'ap was getting. Upset Ga'ap. Seeing that Ga'ap was no longer the favorite of his parents, just sent Ga'ap into a jealous rage. Ga'ap decided he would persuade his brother Cressil into coming to the forbidden lake of fire. Cressel went along with his brother's wishes and joined him one more time to see the lake of fire. It seemed as though they were having the time of their lives playing by the lake of fire. But Gahap was waiting for the right opportunity to catch his brother off guard, and when he did, he would push him into the lake of fire. Everything went just the way Gahap hoped it would. He pushed his brother into the lake of fire and watched in horror as the flesh melted off his body. Gahap was so excited to have his brother out of his way so his parents would spend more time with him. But when one of the gargoyles happened to fly by the lake of fire and see what Gahap was doing to his brother, Cressel, the gargoyle reported back to Gahap's parents what they had witnessed. Gahap's parents were furious and heartbroken that one brother killed another brother over jealousy. Gahap's parents sent Gahap to the lake of fire, where he had killed his brother Cressel, to be tied to a tree next to the lake of fire for 7 days, with little food or water, in hopes he would learn a lesson from the evil deed he had committed. Gahap learned his lesson all right when his father released his demon son from the tree by the lake of fire. Gahap was so overwhelmed with guilt that he immediately broke free from his father's grasp and headed straight for the lake of fire, saying, "Cressel, I'm coming to join you. Jealousy got the best of me. Now I must pay for my brother's death." It was too late for Gahap's father, Beelzebul, to stop Gahap from ascending into the lake of fire. Beelzebul cursed at the devil for taking his 2 sons from him so early in life. The devil's response to Beelzebul was, "I can hear you loud and clear, Beelzebul. My advice to you is, shut your damn mouth before I shut it for you. I'm not the one who disobeyed my commands. You had a beautiful hell on earth, but you and Mania decided to disobey me. So now that the hell you once knew is gone, you want to blame me? I should take you and Mania and throw you both in the lake of fire. If I found out you and Mania are planning to seek revenge against me, you will both be thrown into the lake of fire to join your 2 sons, Gahap and Cressel." Beelzebub said, "Okay, Satan, I'll do as you say." "Good idea, Beelzebub. Let's hope we never have this conversation again. And if we do, you know what will happen to you both," said the devil. As months passed by, like the wind, Beelzebub and Mania were missing their 2 sons, Gahap and Cressel, terribly. Their feelings for revenge for what the devil did to their 2 sons was too strong to ignore, so they tried their best to come up with a plan to defeat the devil. After several failed attempts by Beelzebub and Mania to seek revenge on the devil decided it was time to send Beelzebub and Mania to the lake of fire to join their 2 sons, Gahap and Cressel. The devil sent his 2 strongest gargoyles to bring Beelzebub and Mania to the lake of fire to receive their punishment from the devil. The gargoyles burst into Beelzebub and Mania's hut, where they lived, and whisked them off to the lake of fire to accept their death sentence in front of the devil. The devil said to Beelzebub and Mania, "For what you have done to disgrace hell, that I stand for, I'm casting you both to the lake of fire to join your 2 sons, Gahap and Cressel." Beelzebub and Mania were picked up by the 2 gargoyles that brought them to the lake of fire and flown above the lake of fire, waiting for the devil to tell the gargoyles to release them into the lake. Mania screaming and Beelzebub cursing at the devil to spare their lives. But the devil doesn't spare lives. The devil said, "I've heard enough. Release these pathetic demons into the lake." The gargoyles released Beelzebub and Mania into the lake of fire to join their 2 sons. After the devil did his duty, he said to the 2 gargoyles, "This creation stuff is for the birds." The devil also said, "I'm through with this place called hell on earth. God, if you think you can do better with this creation stuff, this planet is yours." God said, "Devil, I don't know why you thought you could do a better job with creation than I. You failed on 2 attempts. I may fail once, but only once. So, devil, I cast you out from this earth. Now go your way and leave creation process to me." The devil left the earth, and God created man and woman. The rest, as you know, is history. That's the end of that tale. Interesting. Our next story is called Cannibal Lake. Summer finally arrived, and Ben, Susan, and Mike were excited to close their textbooks and spend the summer at the lake. Their parents were so glad their kids loved spending summer at the lake because it gave them time to themselves. The parents dropped off their kids and waved goodbye for the last time. The camp had previously been closed for a couple of years due to a secret government experiment, and that went wrong. But since the new owner of the camp got clearance from the government officials and deemed it safe for the public, the owner was able to reopen the camp. One thing the government forgot was to dispose of the cannibal people that were sealed away in the barrels at the bottom of the lake. Since no reports of any deaths at the lake, the government just put the file on the lake in a cabinet, shut the drawer, and never to be heard of again. So they hoped. But that's one file that's not going to stay buried for long. Then Susan and Mike's fun-filled summer at the lake would be the last fun they would ever get to spend together. They grabbed their sleeping bags and luggage and raced to their cabin, where they would be staying for the rest of the summer. Everything was going fine for the first month, until the groundskeeper went missing. The sheriff came out to question the kids, but no one seen or heard a thing that would lead to the whereabouts of the groundskeeper. The sheriff couldn't file a missing persons report until 48 hours later. Ben said, "We all know the groundskeeper Sam was a little odd, so why should we be too worried? He probably will show up the next day or two. I don't think anything about it, you guys. I'm ready to go swimming in the lake. When night falls, we can roast some marshmallows and sing songs around the campfire." Susan and Mark replied, "That sounds like a plan." They all got their bathing suits on and headed down to the lake to get this party started. Mike snuck in some beer in a cooler to heighten the excitement. Mike grabbed his cooler and Susan and Ben asked him what was in the cooler. Mike replied, "I'll show you when we get to the swimming camp." Susan and Ben watched with excitement as Mike opened the cooler. Mike reached in the cooler and handed Ben and Susan a beer. Everyone popped the tops off the beer cans and gulped them down, like they were drinking water. Ben and Mike, "You don't think the boogeyman got Sam, do you?" Ben laughed as he let out a belch from gulping down the beer too fast. "No, silly. The boogeyman didn't get him. He's probably passed out drunk somewhere in the woods and will probably come staggering back at any moment," replied Mike with a smirk on his face. Mike also said, "I think we still have quite a few beers left to drink, and they're going to get hot in this blazing sun if we don't drink them soon." "Okay, I'll get another cold one," said Ben as he staggered over to the cooler. Susan chimed in and said, "What about me? I'd like another too." Ben handed Susan another, and they all downed their second beer and were getting hot and decided to go for a swim. They were all having a good time, but the good time was about to end, because when they all went under the water at the same time, they resurfaced. Ben was gone. Susan wiped the water from her eyes in a panic. Mike, where's Ben? I don't see him anywhere," Mike answered. "He's probably at the cooler, getting another beer, or he's playing a practical joke on us." As they both were swimming to the shore, a skull floated to the surface. Susan looked back and said to Mike, "Look, something's floating on the surface of the water." Susan told Mike to check it out, but Mike just laughed. "I'm not going to see what it is. Why didn't you go instead?" Susan said, "Okay, chicken, I'll go see what it is." Susan swam back out to investigate. The closer she got to the floating object, the more evident it wasn't a ball floating on the surface of the water, but something else. Susan picked up the object and immediately started screaming. Dropping the object out of her hands, she swam back to shore as fast as she could. When she got to shore, she stood up and fainted. By that time, Mike knew this was serious. Mike picked up Susan and took her back to the cabin to wait until she came to. Then he asked her what scared the hell out of her there. About 30 minutes later, Susan woke up and sat in bed and started rocking back and forth, with her hands on her face, crying and shouting, "Ben, no, Ben." Then she fainted again. Mike shook Susan, trying to wake her up, but she just kept mumbling. Mike decided to get help. He ran to the office where the owner of the camp stays. Mike burst through the door and went over to the owner's desk to ask to borrow his phone. He called out to the owner but got no answer. The owner was sitting in his chair with his back facing Mike. Mike thought he dozed off, so Mike went over to tap him on the shoulder, and the owner fell out of the chair. Mike was in panic mode now. and couldn't believe what he was seeing. The owner's face had been half eaten off. All of his vital organs were missing too. Mike started vomiting out of control. Then all of a sudden, Mike heard someone talking in one of the rooms of the cabins. He went over to investigate. And what would he see when he opened the door? He opened it. Someone pushed him onto the floor. Mike was unaware of the horror behind that door. He tried to escape, but couldn't, because in the room were cannibalistic people who were hungry for flesh. Mike screamed in agony as the cannibal people tore into his body like a bunch of wild animals. Somehow, these people that became cannibals were part of the government experiment that went wrong. These cannibalistic people ate government agents at the experimental site. 10 soldiers from the army were called in to kill the savage people, but somehow their firepower did little to stop them. The soldiers were eaten alive. Another round of soldiers came in and subdued the cannibal people. The soldiers put them into barrels and sealed them and tossed them into the lake, thinking that would be the end of the cannibal people. They were so wrong. The barrels were able to keep them contained for several years, until a couple of scuba divers came across the barrels and opened one up. There's one thing the government didn't realise, is that the barrels contained a fire-retardant liquid inside. Doing this to the cannibal people made their body fireproof. The scuba divers should not have tampered with the barrels, because now the government's secret was about to be unleashed. Right as the diver opened the top of the barrel, all hell broke loose. The scuba divers tried to make a break for it, but the cannibal was now the living dead and was too hungry for flesh to let the tasty meal get away. After the cannibal got full on 2 scuba divers, he went back to the bottom of the lake to free the other cannibals that were still sealed inside the barrels, ready and waiting for a flesh feast. All the dead cannibals were free to wreak havoc on any warm-blooded animal or mammal that got in their way. Susan was all alone in the cabin, wondering when Mike would be back. Hours passed and daylight was gone. When Mike never returned to check up on her, she went searching for him. Susan called his name and got no response. She decided to go to the owner's cabin, thinking Mike was talking about Ben's disappearance. But that would not be the case. And the owner's body was being eaten on right before her eyes. Susan closed her eyes, and thinking that when she opened them, Mike, Ben, and the owner would come over and tell her it was a joke. But when she slowly opened her eyes, she was surrounded by cannibal people licking their chops, drooling, ready to chomp down on her flesh. Susan started screaming, and as she got her hand on the doorknob to run for her life, one of the cannibal people grabbed her by the ankle, started chewing on her ankle. The other cannibal people joined in, tearing into her flesh as she screamed in agony. After the cannibal people were through with Susan's body, they went back to the lake and climbed back into the barrels at the bottom of the lake, waiting for the next tasty meal. Summer was over. Susan, Mike, and Ben's parents came to pick their kids up from camp, but there was no sign of them anywhere. When they went to ask the governor where the children were, all they saw were 3 half-eaten bodies on the floor of the owner's cabin. The mothers ran out of the cabin screaming, and all the men got on the phone and called for help, but got a fast, busy signal. The telephone wires were cut. Then all of a sudden, the men heard their wives screaming in agony as the zombie cannibal people were eating them. But it was too late for their wives. Bodies were torn to shreds. The zombie cannibal people ran towards the men with blood-red eyes, pieces of flesh hanging out of their bloody mouths, ready to chomp down on the men's body. The 3 men ran inside the cabin and barricaded themselves inside. There was no stopping the zombie cannibal people from getting inside the cabin, especially when it came to the craving for flesh. The men didn't stand a chance. The zombie cannibal people tore the front door of the cabin off its hinges and pounced on the 3 men like a bunch of wild, starving animals that hadn't eaten in weeks. The next morning, the sheriff came to visit the owner and see how the summer was at camp. When the sheriff got out of his car, he said, "What is that god-awful smell?" He placed his handkerchief over his nose and mouth because of the stench, started canvassing the area when all of a sudden, the sheriff was knocked down so hard, he fell unconscious. The zombie cannibal people were at it again, craving more flesh to satisfy their hunger. But it didn't take long for the army to be called in camp once more, and this time the army was ready to finish the job. They brought in tanks to secure the area. Yes, they did. The commanding officer had an idea and said to the men, "Johnny, grab your flamethrower from the back of the truck. Let's burn these cannibal zombies to ashes." "Sounds like a good idea to me," replied Johnny. Johnny went back to the truck, got the flamethrower out, put the fireproof suit on and glasses, and raced towards the cannibal zombies. He aimed the flamethrower at their bodies and flames. They covered the zombies' bodies, but nothing was happening. It was as if all that was doing was washing their bodies up with water. The flamethrower did absolutely nothing to stop them. The cannibal zombies pulled the flamethrower from Johnny's hands, turned the flamethrower on him as he was running for his life. But the cannibal zombies caught up to Johnny and knocked him on the ground, then tore off Johnny's flame-retardant suit and burned him alive until there was nothing left but ashes. Finally, the commanding officer sent in tanks and fired upon the cannibal armies, blowing their bodies' parts all over the lake. The cannibal zombies were finally finished off, so it seemed. Instead of incinerating the cannibal zombies' bodies, the commanding officer said to his men to cover up the body parts, throw them back in the lake. His men did as he ordered them to do. The commanding officer wasn't very educated about zombies to know that just blowing their body parts don't kill them. The camp was officially boarded up and closed down forever. But little did the commanding officer know that as they were leaving the cannibal zombie parts in the lake, well, they were slowly finding their way back to their bodies to form an evil killing machine once again. As the last army truck pulled out of the camp, you could see the cannibal zombie's head rise out of the water, ready to feed on anyone who dares enter the lake. A sign that some teenage kids placed in front as a joke read, "Swimmers, beware of zombies. They're always hungry for human flesh." The end. And that is our next story from Drak von Stommel. The next story is called Eyes of the Devil. Jason started life off with 3 strikes against him. He was born on a sacrificial altar that his mother was sacrificed on during a satanic ritual. Jason's father was the leader of a satanic cult known as Satan's 7 Demon Knights that were conducting the ritual. Jason's mother was offered as a sacrifice because she wanted out of her husband's satanic cult. Jason's father raised the sacrificial knife and drove it through his wife's heart. She screamed in agony. As the blood dripped off the sacrificial altar, Jason's father cut open her belly, reached inside, and pulled his newborn baby son out, dipped his finger in his wife's blood. Then Jason's father drew a pentagram on his son's forehead and proceeded to read some verses of the Satanic Bible to welcome his son into his cult, Satan's 7 Demon Knights. Jason had no idea he was going to become one of the evilest men this town has ever known. Jason was made fun of all through high school because of the way he dressed, and I would try to read verses from the Satanic Bible to some of the classmates. No one cared about hearing what Jason had to say about his evil beliefs. One day, Jason had all he could take from his classmates taunting him. Jason decided to make a list of names that mocked him the most and kill them one by one. And let's see how. I think I'll start with John, since he threw my Bible in the bonfire at school during the homecoming game, said Jason. Jason invited John over as a peace offering to show him that he was just as normal as any other boy at his age. The only difference was Jason believed in Satan and John believed in God. John didn't realize how blind he was to Jason's convincing ways and Jason's conniving ways. John accepted and said to himself, "It's only for a brief visit," and I told Jason I had a lot of homework and couldn't stay very long. John came over and was amazed at how typical the inside of Jason's house was. But John had no idea what was hidden, the secrets that could be unfolded. Once the front door closed behind them, there was no turning back. The doors and windows locked automatically. Jason asked, "What do you think, John?" John replied, "I wasn't expecting this at all. I was expecting a very dark and creepy place inside. Jason asked John if he would like something to drink. John said sure. "And would you just like a Coke?" asked Jason. "That'd be fine," replied John. As Jason escorted John around the house, John was feeling a little woozy. "Jason, would it be all right if I could sit down for a moment? It feels like the whole house is spinning around me," explained John. "Sure. Come inside this room. There's a chair you can sit down in, and hopefully a dizzy spell will go away. Then I can show you the rest of the house before you have to leave," said Jason. "Thanks, I do appreciate it," said John. Jason helped John sit down in the chair. As John placed his hands and arms on the chair, Jason handed John a glass of water that had been mixed with sleeping pills. As John went into a deep sleep, Jason wrapped duct tape around John's hands and body, so when he woke up he wouldn't be able to move his hands and feet. Jason poured kerosene on John's body and placed a Bible in his lap. John finally woke up and tried to move, but couldn't. "Jason, what's the big idea? Is this some joke? If it is, it's not funny. Get this tape off me so I can leave and we'll forget all about this," said John, but his voice was nervous. "Not so fast, Johnny boy. Look what's in your lap," said Jason with a smirk on his face. "It's just a Bible," said John. "And don't you remember when we were at the homecoming game? You made fun of me in front of all my classmates. You waved my Bible in the air and said, 'Here's where your satanic Bible belongs, in the fire.' I watched it burn." "What's that smell?" asked John. "I do believe it's kerosene," laughed Jason. "You're sick. You wait till I can get myself free. I'm going to beat the holy crap out of you," said John. "You got anything else to say before I set you on fire?" "Yeah, I got something to say. Out you rot in hell, you sick, twisted person," said John with a stern voice. Jason struck the match on the matchbox and dropped the burning match, stick in John's lap, and watched John burn up in flames. Then Jason ran in the kitchen and grabbed a fire extinguisher underneath the kitchen sink and sprayed John's charred body with the fire extinguisher. Jason got a broom and a trash bag to clean up John's remains and waited until it was dark to dispose of the body. Jason dug a deep hole and tossed the trash bag with John's remains in and filled it with dirt and threw leaves on top of the patch of dirt. So if someone was walking in his backyard, nothing would look suspicious and cause him to call the police. Jason picked up the shovel he used to bury John's body and carried it back to the garage, cleaned off the dirt, and placed the shovel in the corner. Jason went inside the house, went into his bedroom, sat at his desk to plan his next kill. Jason decided his next method of killing would involve a 50-gallon drum of acid. Jason knew this would be cool to see the body's flesh melt off the bone, leaving behind skeletal remains. When Jason returned to school, his classmates were making chicken noises and calling his cult members Jason and the Chicken 7 Sissyites. Jason yelled obscenities at everyone and said, "I will find out who did this, and they will pay, I can assure you." The classmates just kept on teasing Jason. So he ran out of school and waited until school was out to call some of the students on the phone to see if they knew who did it. It only took Jason about 10 phone calls to find out who it was. When Jimmy Spencer was found out by Jason, Jimmy was afraid of what Jason would do to him. If he found out he had a lie, he was the one responsible. But could he lie to him? Of course, when Jason pressed Jimmy for the truth, Jimmy started crying and said, "I was told not to say anything." Jason replied, "You know what's going to happen if you don't tell me the person that played this prank on me." Jimmy said in a whimpering voice, "You really wouldn't hurt me, would you?" Jason replied, "I'll give you 3 seconds to tell me. If you don't, I'll be at your house within 1 minute." Jimmy said, "You don't live that close to me." Jason said in a stern voice, "Look out your window." Jimmy dropped the phone and cautiously approached the window, prying back the curtain as he was sobbing. "Oh my God," said Jimmy. Jimmy ran back to the phone, shaking like a leaf. "It's Mary Beth, Mary Beth. Please don't tell her I told you. Mary Beth posted lies about you all over school, with a photo of you and the satanic cult you belong to known as Satan's 7 Demon Knights. The picture had their heads cut out with chicken heads on their heads." Jason didn't find Mary Beth's joke very funny. Jason stayed out of school for a few days in hopes everyone at school would forget about Mary Beth's prank. Jason couldn't shake off Mary Beth's prank out of his mind, and every time he passed by the barrel of acid in the garage, he thought how great it would be to pay her back for the humiliation she caused him. Jimmy was scared from Mary Beth for what he told Jason. Jimmy lay down in his bed, crying his eyes out, as Jason got in his car and sped off to plan Mary Beth's abduction. Jason waited until midnight to abduct Mary Beth. Jimmy called Mary Beth a couple of hours later to check and make sure it was all right. Mary Beth, she was on her way to a party. Jimmy hung up the phone and was relieved to hear her voice, and no, nothing had happened to her. Jimmy said to himself, "Jason got me all worked up for nothing." Jimmy sat down by his television, playing video games the rest of the night. Unbeknownst to him, midnight had arrived. Jason got in his car with a bottle of chloroform and duct tape and headed to Mary Beth's house. Jason took extra precautions not to cause suspicion while driving to Mary Beth's house, driving the speed limit, not being erratic. Jason turned his headlights off on his car as he approached Mary Beth's house. Jason sat in the car for a few minutes to check his surroundings before getting out of the vehicle and proceeded to the back of Mary Beth's house. Well, it looks like this neighborhood is as dead as Mary Beth's going to be in a few moments. Jason got out his handkerchief of the glove compartment of his car, and he opened the car's trunk to get the screwdriver to use on the back door. That's what he was going to use, and he was cautiously going to head upstairs to Mary Beth's bedroom where she was fast asleep. Jason quietly closed the trunk of his car and checked his pockets to make sure he had everything he needed to subdue Mary Beth. He felt inside his right jacket pocket and said, "Handkerchief, chloroform, check." Then felt inside his left pocket and duct tape, check. Jason even wore black clothing so he would blend in with the night sky. Jason approached the back door, pulled out his screwdriver from the pocket and pried the door jamb back to expose the lock, making it a chink to open the door. Jason said quietly, "That was easy." Jason was lucky Mary Beth's house had no alarm system. Jason brought along a handgun with a silencer, just to be used to anyone in the house other than Mary Beth. Jason slowly closed the door, quietly walked up the stairs to each bedroom to kill every living thing that might cause his plan to go awry abducting Mary Beth. Jason opened the first bedroom door and cautiously walked to the front of the bed, pulled out his handgun, slowly screwed on the silencer, the barrel of the gun, shined his flashlight at the two people sleeping in bed. Jason knew these two people in this bed were not Mary Beth, so he raised the gun and pointed the barrel about 6 inches from each one of their heads and pulled the trigger, killing them instantly. Jason exited the room and opened the next bedroom door, only to find it empty. Proceeded to the next room, and there she was. Mary Beth, still fast asleep without any knowledge that both her parents were very much dead in the bedroom across from hers. Jason pulled the bottle of chloroform and the handkerchief out of his jacket pocket and slowly approached the head of Mary Beth's bed as she lay on her back in deep sleep. Jason proceeded to open the top of the chloroform bottle and saturate the handkerchief, then place the handkerchief over her mouth, causing Mary Beth to be in an unconscious state. Jason duct taped Mary Beth's hands and feet, carried her out of the house, and put her body in the trunk of the car, drove back to his house, pulled his car into the garage, opened the trunk of his car, and pulled Mary Beth's unconscious body from the trunk, threw her over his shoulder, and placed her in the barrel of acid. Then her eyes opened wide from the burning sensation and the caustic flames emitting from the acid. She tried to scream, but that only lasted a few seconds as Jason pushed the rest of her body into the barrel of acid. All that was left was her skull and bones floating at the top of the barrel. All this excitement from his second kill just made him hungry. Jason's father finally came from home from a meeting with 5 new members of the Satan 7 Demon Knights to be introduced to his son. Jason, I'd like you to introduce you to the newest members, Mark, Michael, and Bob, and to my writers Justin and Dave. Jason shook each one of their hands and asked his father to come to the garage to show him his latest kill. Jason's father and the newest member followed suit into the garage for the highlight of the day. Jason said, "Look, father, inside the barrel is Mary Beth. She called the Satan 7 Chicken Sissy Nights, and everyone at school made fun of the name that we stood for." Jason's father saw the skull and some bones floating on top of the barrel, and he laughed. "My son, you have done well. Look, everyone, this is why I'm so proud of my son. He did this on his own. I expect every new member to do the same. Jason, bring the skull and bones upstairs to the sacrificial room. We'll display these bones on the altar for the rest of the members to see our next ritual." "Well, father, I still have a few on my list to scratch off, so if you don't mind, I'll be in my room planning the fate of my next victim," said Jason. "Okay, do what you gotta do. I'll see you in the morning," said Jason's father. Jason headed upstairs to his room to plan the next kill. I wasn't planning on adding Jimmy Spence to the list, but when Maribeth's disappearance gets reported, Jimmy will try to pin a death on me, so I think it's best to silence him, said Jason. "I know just the method I'll use on Jimmy. An electric chair. First, I'll need an oak chair to strap him in. Next, I'll need 3 wires, one to attach the metal element that would be attached to his head with a sponge saturated with saline solution. The other 2 wires attached to each ankle, the saturated sponge with saline solution. I'll lure Jimmy over to the house, telling him Mary Beth was at my house apologizing for making fun of me at school," said Jason. Jason called Jimmy on the phone and said, "Hey, Jimmy, Mary Beth was due to come over to my house so she can apologize to you in person for dragging you into this little prank that she conjured up." Jimmy took the lie. Jason was telling him. Hook, line, and sinker. Jimmy got in his car, drove straight over to Jason's house, excited to hear Mary Beth apologize. Jimmy said, "I'm so glad I can get on with my life, not in fear. That Jason may bring harm." As Jimmy was on his way to Jason's house, Jason gathered Mary Beth's bones from the altar and pieced together a body to form a skeletal structure and put a dress and a wig on it to give it this appearance that Mary Beth was sort of alive and well from behind. After Jason dressed up Mary Beth's bones, he sat her body in the chair next to the electric one that he made for Jimmy. "I can't wait to see the look on Jimmy's face when he sees Mary Beth," said Jason. Jimmy was so excited he was going to see Mary Beth. When he was at Jason's house, he said, "I'm going to give her a big hug and tell her how glad I am to see her." Jason decided to dim the lights in the room so Jimmy would want to get a closer look at Mary Beth sitting in the chair. Jimmy arrived at Jason's house in record time, only to find out it was all set up. Jimmy got out of his car, shut the car door, and hurried up the steps to Jason's house and rang the doorbell. Jason opened the door and said, "I'm glad you could make it. Mary Beth's waiting, second room to the right." Jimmy's heart was pounding with excitement because he could finally put all this worrying behind him and get on with his life. Jimmy opened the door and said, "Jason, I believe there is a light out in your room." Jason answered, "I just changed out one of the burnt-out bulbs this morning." Jason walked into the room behind Jimmy and told Jimmy to sit next to Mary Beth while he gets another bulb to replace the bad one. Jimmy sat down next to Mary Beth, see how she was doing, and, well, he got no answer from her. "Jason, what's going on here? Mary Beth hasn't said a word," asked Jimmy in a concerned tone of voice. Jason came back into the room and said, "What's the matter?" "Mary Beth hasn't said a word since I entered the room. Is this some joke?" asked Jimmy. Jason approached Jimmy and said, "Why don't you take a closer look at Mary Beth?" Jimmy replied, "It's too dark to see her face. What's wrong with her eyes? Glowing red." Jason's voice changed to a demonic voice. He told Jimmy he was going to die. Jimmy tried to get up out of the chair, but Jason had a remote control switch in his hand that locked Jimmy's hand and feet securely to the chair he was sitting in. Jason changed out the burnt light bulb so Jimmy could see Mary Beth's dead body sitting next to him. When Jason put the new light bulb in the socket, the whole room was illuminated with light. Jimmy started screaming, "What did you do to Mary Beth?" Let's see. Well, she failed. She failed the initiation into the Satan 7 Demon Knights. "Please let me go. I won't tell anyone," said Jimmy. He was scared stiff. Jason just laughed and started applying the solvent to the sponges. He placed each sponge with a wire attached to each shackle on the ankles and put the metal helmet on top of Jimmy's head. Pulled the switch, but there wasn't enough current to cool Jimmy. "I'll just flip the switch again," thought Jason. Jason flipped the switch again and again. No, did Jimmy. So Jason went down to the basement and got a shovel hanging on the wall, went back into the room where Jimmy and the already dead Mary Beth sat. "I think this should do the trick," said Jason. Jason got behind Jimmy, and as Jimmy was screaming and begging for his life, Jason swung the shovel around Jimmy's head. As the shovel struck Jimmy's head, there was a loud ringing from the metal on the shovel. Jimmy's skull split, and his blood splattered on the wall, followed by a low moan from Jimmy as he took his last breath. Jason immediately called his father on the phone and told him to come home and meet his latest victim. Jason wasn't aware that the police were hot on his trail because a neighbour tipped off the cops, telling them he saw something that looked like a body being pulled out of the trunk of Jason's car right outside his house. When Jason answered the knock on the door, it wasn't his father. It was the police with a search warrant. Jason slammed the door in front of the officer's face and ran back to the door to escape, but the cops surrounded the house. Jason knew his killing spree was over, and he wasn't going to be taken alive. Jason ran back to the room where Mary Beth and Jimmy's dead bodies were, laid on the altar with a sacrificial knife in his hand, and as the officers broke the door down, Jason said a prayer to Satan, then drove the blade through his heart. It was too late for the officers to stop Jason. Jason's father arrived home minutes later to see his son. Of course, he was excited to see his latest skill, but his son was dead, and all his father would get to see was his dead son with a knife through the chest and a blanket being put over his body. Jason's father wouldn't talk, so he was appointed an attorney. Jason's father was tried and convicted of being an accessory to murder on all 3 counts for the deaths of John, Mary Beth and Jimmy. He was also convicted of 6 first-degree murder and then another 25 victims by the time they had done a search in the backyard. Jason's father is serving his life sentence on death row. The remaining members of the Satan 7 Demon Knights, they were convicted of lesser charges. They were sentenced to 25 years for accessory to murder to state prison. Finally, the victims' families could get some closure for the heinous crimes that were committed by the Satan's 7 Demon Knights. The townspeople could get on with their lives and not live in fear, not knowing if it would be their last days on earth. The end. And those are another 3 tales from Drac von Stoller. He only writes short stories, and something that I want to explain is it's not always worded correctly. I know that, but unfortunately, I'm reading them at the same time as I'm recording, so I don't read through them and then read them again. I just read them with you guys, as I'm reading through them. So I don't always see the mistakes needed to be corrected until after I've read it. So just bear that in mind, that I know they're a bit weird, aren't they? And some of the sentences don't necessarily make sense in some of the books. Not all of them, most of them are pretty damn good, but there is some that, like that one I've just read, there were a couple of things in there that just didn't really make sense in the sentence. But as I'm reading them for the first time with you, I just read it as it comes, and unfortunately it's only afterwards, after I've read it, that I think that's a bit odd. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, but thank you for listening, and many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I've decided we're going to continue with our Drac von Stoller collection. Drac von Stoller is available on Google Play Store Books. Google Play Store Books has quite literally hundreds of free books to enjoy, guys. Why not try it out? But one of my favourites collection is the Drac von Stoller collection. He writes short stories, but I've always liked them. This one is called Hellhounds. In a little town called Linville, it is said that a witch was burned at the stake deep in the woods, and just before her body went up in flames, she said, "Anyone that enters these woods will not leave alive, mark my words." One of the townspeople said, "Burn, witch, burn." Then everyone chanted, "Burn, witch, burn." The witch went up in flames, and the townspeople went back to their homes, thinking the witch was gone for good. But this witch was about to unleash the hell she promised beyond the smouldering ashes where her charred body lay. As night set in and the townspeople were fast asleep, and the time was 3 a.m. on all their clocks, which was known as the witching hour. That's when things were unfolding deep in the woods. A howling sound was gradually getting louder deep in the woods until some of the townspeople were unable to sleep. So, they got their guns and torches and headed deep into the woods to investigate the howling sounds. Then, as they got closer to where the howling sounds were coming from, all hell broke loose on them. The demon-possessed hounds were attacking the mob of townspeople like they hadn't had a meal in days. The hounds' eyes were blazing red as fire, and the horde of townspeople was screaming and moaning and begging for the hounds to let them live. But these hounds from hell weren't about to back off and let their tasty meal just get away. As the hounds tore into their flesh and licked their bloody chops in delight, there was a rumbling noise coming from the shallow grave that the townspeople buried her in. The witch rose from her shallow grave and was laughing as the hounds devoured the townspeople. The witch said, "I told you all that if you entered these woods, you would never leave alive." The witch laughed as their screams and moans echoed through the woods. Amidst the chaos and carnage, the news of the horrific events reached the ears of neighbouring towns. The tales spread like wildfire, carrying with them the scent of death. Fear that gripped Linville. Whispers of the malevolent witch and her demon hounds began to fuel the darkest imaginations of those who heard the stories. The woods, that had once been a peaceful escape for the townspeople, were now deemed a forbidden place, shrouded in terror. Out of the shadows emerged a figure unlike any other, a witch hunter named Iman van Helm. He travelled far and wide, seeking out supernatural threats that plagued innocent lives. His reputation was as skilled and fearless, well, as the arcane preceded him, and his heart was set on liberating Linville from the clutches of the vengeful witch and her hellish companions. Eamon's arrival was like a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. Armed with knowledge passed down through generations of witch hunters, he had an array of enchanted weapons and potent spells at his disposal. The townspeople, desperate for salvation, rallied behind him, their fear-driven determination renewed by the sight of a true champion. With his grim demeanour and stern expression, Eamon addressed the frightened villagers. "Fear not, for I am here to put an end to the torment that has befallen your town. But to succeed, I need your trust and cooperation. This witch and her hounds are powerful, but they can be defeated. We shall strike back against the darkness that plagues these woods." Guided by Eamon's unwavering resolve, the townspeople prepared for a confrontation like no other. They gathered silver weapons, blessed amulets, and torches infused with potent herbs, all tools they hoped would aid them against the supernatural forces they were about to face. Eamon shared his insights about the witch's weaknesses, cautioning them about her manipulation and the importance of standing united against her tricks. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cursed woods, Eamon led the townspeople toward the heart of darkness. The forest seemed to absorb their every footstep, muffling their breaths and heightening their senses. The howls of the demon hounds echoed ominously, a chilling reminder of the danger that lay ahead. The encounter was fierce and brutal. The townspeople fought with a determination they had never known, and Eamon's strategy leadership proved invaluable. His enchanted arrows pierced through the hounds' fiery gaze, causing them to falter and retreat. But the witch, sensing her impending defeat, unleashed her most potent spells. Shadows twisted and danced, and illusions clouded the minds of the villagers. Yet Eamon stood firm, wielding ancient incantations and wielding silvered weapons with precise, practical precision. His expertise in battling the supernatural was evident as he shattered the witch's illusions and called upon divine protection to shield his comrades. Together, they broke through the bewitching defences and cornered the witch. The final confrontation crackled with raw energy. Spells clashed and silver met sorcery in a battle that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of the woods. Eamon's determination was unyielding, and he channeled the collective will of the townspeople into a single decisive blow. With a blinding flash, the witch's malevolent power shattered, her body crumbled into ash. As the witch fell, her hold on the demon hounds was broken. The hounds, no longer controlled by a dark influence, whined and backed away, retreating into the depths of the woods. The victory was met with a mixture of relief and exhaustion, the air thick with the scent of victory and the memories of those lost. Linville's woods were no longer a realm of terror, but a place where the townspeople could once again find solace. Eamon Van Helm, the witch hunter, had delivered on his promise, earning the town's eternal gratitude. His name became a legend whispered around campfires, a symbol of courage in the face of darkness. And as the years passed, Linville's children would play freely beneath the canopy of those once dreaded woods, their laughter a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the triumph over the forces of pure evil. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this Drac von Stoller story. I really appreciate it. Please hit the like, share if you can, and if you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the Drac von Stoller collection. We're now going to read Living with the Dead by Drac von Stoller. Henry loved his family so much he couldn't bear to put them in the cold ground when they died, knowing that would be the last time he would ever get to see and feel their warm embrace. Henry never told his wife Jane his true feelings about if her or their kids passed on, what would happen to them, so he kept his secret bottled up inside. Years passed, and one by one of Henry's 3 children and wife died under mysterious circumstances. Being that it was so long ago, there was no such thing as DNA testing or significant medical advances that would put Henry under suspicion. The period I'm talking about is the 15th century. Henry and his wife lived in a castle with over 1,000 acres. If any tragedy were to happen at Henry's castle, it would take at least a week before a practicing physician could arrive by way of horse and carriage. It was evident that Henry was getting sicker and sicker as the days wore on, And he had no intentions of being the first to go and not see his dream come true. So Henry decided he better act fast. Henry felt, since his body was telling him he may not be around much longer, he would prepare a meal and put arsenic in his family's food. Then he would be able to fulfill his sick fantasy. Finally, the moment had arrived. And as Henry was preparing his wife and 3 children's meals, their last meal, he added that special seasoning, as in arsenic. Henry came out of the kitchen whistling and placed each family member's plate of death on the table and watched as each one ate the tasty meal of death that he so lovingly prepared for them all. About 5 minutes into their meal, Henry's wife and children started gasping for breath. They all turned towards Henry and asked, "What did you put in our food?" Then their heads hit their plates and they were all dead. Henry got up from the table and said, "I just wanted to see you all for the last time before I joined you." But Henry was a coward, so putting arsenic in his food wasn't going to happen. So he sat his wife and 3 children up straight in their chairs, cleaned the food off their faces, and told his dead family he would be going into town to get more food and would be back shortly. When Henry arrived with the food, a friend of his wife was devastated at what she saw, and just as she ran towards the door to get help, Henry opened the door and dropped his food, then chased her through his castle. Henry grabbed a butcher's knife from the kitchen and didn't want her to get out alive to let the secret out. The neighbors' screams echoed throughout the castle. Henry finally caught up with her and grabbed her by the back of the hair and said, "Nobody is going to destroy my family." The woman screamed and screamed. But Henry knew if she were to escape, his dream secret would out. So with one slit to her throat, she was dead. Then Henry picked up her lifeless body in his arms, as blood was spewing out of her jugular vein, and took her back down the steps to join the rest of his dead family at the dinner table. As Henry sat his neighbour in the chair, he said, "Now stop bleeding all over my place. My wife doesn't like to clean up someone else's mess." At this point, Henry couldn't distinguish fantasy from reality, and anyone that knocked upon Henry's castle door, it would be their last. Henry would let the person enter only for them to be killed and placed in an empty chair at the dinner table to join his family and the rest of the poor souls that entered Henry's castle. Henry was a killing machine, and he said to himself, "There's no stopping Henry, the killer." Henry thought he was bulletproof, but he was running out of places to display his skills inside the castle, so he started hanging any new kills over the walls of the castle with a rope around the necks. Finally, one day when Henry was hanging a dead body over the edge of his castle, he lost his balance and fell over the wall and hit his head, first on the ground, ending his killing days forever. With the news of Henry's gruesome demise spreading through the town, the eerie hush settled over the castle and the surrounding area. However, the legend of Henry's heinous acts continued to haunt the minds of the townspeople for years to come. Some claimed to hear whispers and ghostly cries emanating from the castle's walls, while others swore they saw shadowy figures moving about in the moonlight. As time went on, the curiosity and fear surrounding the castle attracted the attention of paranormal investigators. A team of experts in the supernatural, led by Dr. Amelia Hartley, arrived in town to unravel the mysterious quizzings of the townspeople, the ones that shrouded the fortress in all the paranormal mysteries. The investigators set up their equipment, including electromagnetic field detectors, night vision cameras, audio recording devices, hoping to capture any evidence of lingering spirits. Dr. Hartley was no stranger to the unexplained or the inexplicable. Having studied various paranormal phenomena through her career, she was both skeptical and fascinated by the stories surrounding Henry's castle. As the team delved deeper into their investigation, they did begin experiencing strange occurrences. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. Temperature fluctuations defied natural explanations, and eerie whispers seemed to dance on the edge of hearing. Despite the unsettling events, Dr. Hartley remained determined to uncover the truth. Late one night, as a storm raged outside, the investigators gathered in the castle's grand hall, reviewing the data they had collected. Suddenly, the room was bathed in an otherworldly glow, and a chilling breeze swept through the chamber. A spectral figure materialized before their eyes, its form shifting and contorting. As the investigators watched a mixture of awe and terror, the figure spoke. Its voice a haunting echo of the past. You seek to expose the darkness that lingers here, it intoned. But beware, for the truth may be more horrifying than you can imagine. Dr. Hartley, her heart pounding, mustered her courage and addressed the spirit. Who are you? And what happened within these walls? The spirit's form twisted, its visage shifting between that of Henry and his victims. I am the collective anguish of those who suffered at his hands, it answered. He revelled in his atrocities, drawing power from fear and pain. But his malevolent reign is over, and yet his malevolence remains. The investigators realized that they were not dealing with a typical haunting. Henry's castle had become a focal point for residue malevolent energy. Well, this was perpetuated by the dark deeds. The spirit warned that attempting to dispel this energy might unleash an even greater terror upon the world. As the investigators contemplated their next move, a thunderous crash reverberated through the castle. Rushing outside, they were greeted by a scene of utter devastation. The castle's walls had crumbled, revealing a hidden chamber beneath. Inside, they found a shrine-like space filled with macabre artifacts, each seemingly imbued with the lingering energy of Henry's cruelty. The investigators understood that their mission had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of dispelling the energy, they had inadvertently unleashed it by exposing the hidden chamber. The malevolent force swirled around them, a storm of darkness and despair. Just as all seemed lost, Dr. Hartley remembered a theory she had encountered in her research, a theory of balance. She realized that the only way to neutralize the energy was to counteract it with a surge of positive emotions. The investigators joined hands, closing their eyes and focusing on feelings of compassion, hope, and unity. The chamber trembled as the energy clashed, but gradually the darkness began to dissipate. The storm outside subsided, and a sense of tranquility settled over the castle. When the investigators opened their eyes, they found themselves alone in the chamber, surrounded by the remnants of Henry's malevolence. In the end, the castle stood as a testament to the power of human resilience and the potential for light to overcome even the darkest of horrors. Dr. Hartley and her team left the castle with a newfound respect for the delicate balance between the seen and unseen, and a realization that sometimes the most potent spirits are the ones within ourselves. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this wonderful story from Drak von Stoller. I really appreciate it. Please hit the like, share if you can, and if you've not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Many blessings. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the Drak von Stoller collection. The next story, this one now that we're going to do, is called The Demon Witch. Life of 5-year-old Hilda was everything but rosy growing up in a small village, 17th century Salem, Massachusetts. Her looks were atrocious. She tried to overlook the teasing that was caused by it, but resentment and hatred started growing inside her warm heart. Being that Hilda had an aunt named Helga, that was a practicing witch, only escalated hatred towards her from townspeople. Hilda didn't know her aunt very well, because days after her aunt presented her with a spell book and told her to keep it nearby, should she need it. Her aunt was burned at the stake for practicing witchcraft. Being that Hilda was just an innocent child, she couldn't comprehend why anyone would want to hurt her aunt. She thought she figured the world was perfect and that no one died until the day her aunt did. And that turned her whole world upside down and turned a child's warm heart to a cold heart overnight. The day after her aunt was burned at the stake, Hilda would have frequent visits by her aunt in her dreams that eventually turned Hilda into a practicing witch for years to come. Hilda couldn't shake off that horrible way her aunt died, so she decided she couldn't hold back the pain anymore, and it was time that the townspeople pay for what they did to her aunt. Hilda gathered her thoughts, knowing that she is now an adult, and that happened many years ago, but it still haunts her to this day, and the townspeople only made the memory of her aunt's death compound on her hatred that was building up inside of her. Hilda wiped the tears from her eyes and opened the spell book and said an incantation while staring into a dresser mirror, but the tears kept coming. Finally, Hilda decided it was time that the townspeople pay for their despicable behaviour, and what she had in mind was going to be hell for them all, and she would stop at nothing to make them all pay. She went to her bedroom, opened a top dresser drawer, and pulled out the old dusty book that contained spells that her Aunt Helga, who was a witch, gave to her when she was a little girl, and told her if anyone or anything would try to bring harm to her, the spell book would save her from any damage that may try coming her way. Then all of a sudden a voice came out of nowhere saying, "Hilda, what is your wish that was so important that you summoned me from the dead?" Hilda answered, "I summoned you because of what terrible things that the townspeople did to my aunt and me. I know the circumstances, but the pain is too great. I guess I'll burn in hell for it, but there is nothing to look forward to in this life. I know my Aunt Helga would be proud of me seeking vengeance on this town that burned her at the stake. So if you don't mind, let's get on with it." "As you wish," replied the unknown voice. Hilda's bedroom door flung wide open, and a bright white light lit up the whole room. Then seconds later the room was pitch black, and then the voice said, "Hilda, payback's going to be a bitch for the townspeople, and everything and everyone is going to burn for what they've done to you and your aunt. I'll give you the power to make this happen. So go now, and may all burn in hell." Laughed the creepy voice. Hilda was so happy to finally be able to make this town and the people pay for all the hell they brought to her aunt and her family.